Awesome. Okay. So we're recording. I think we're good. That way we can always post the VOD up a little bit later. Okay, guys. So this is going to be week 2, the early game. Now, for again, with what we talked about last week, that was more of our kind of brief introduction into not only Infinity Kingdom, but just Kingdom Builders in general. So there was a lot of kind of initial conversation that we had when it came to how you're starting out, what some of those expectations are going to be, right? What is kind of the purpose of a kingdom builder, along with all of the areas that are in them that you can actually participate in, not only for in-game, but for outside of the game as well, as far as areas that kind of affect both. Now, what we're going to be talking about this week, again, I think, let me go off wherever this outline was that I had somewhere. Let's see. Here we go. So the outline that we had, right, so we're going to talk about kind of the first month of the server. We'll talk about events and how they impact the beginning of a server. We'll talk about what players and alliance trends you're going to see. We'll talk about kind of how to discern things that you want to keep an eye on when a server is starting out. Approaching with a good mentality, having realistic versus unrealistic expectations. Organizing your server early, how it can really help you in the long run. And that's going to be talking about some management things. So if you're someone who's an officer, if you're a lead in another server, and you are just interested in getting some tips on how you can go about managing your server in a multitude of ways, we'll cover a good amount. And then we'll also talk about some of the big server-wide events. These are ones that typically occur early on, and then ones that are also going to be occurring later. Some of those are going to be City Siege, Supreme Alliance, Contention of Lords, which is your kill event, and then King of the Hill, which is like the new MGE for those that have played other games that have those in them. So the first thing we will start off talking about is, what does the first month of your server look like, right? What are you going to be experiencing in it? And in addition, what are some things that you can expect? So when you're initially loading up, a lot of what you're going to be seeing happening on, for example, day 1 is players that are just constantly being recruited. You're going to end up having players that are, for the most part, basically just posting ads. There's going to be a lot of promotional ads that are being not only done in World Chat, but also in your Kingdom Chat in the game. And a lot of it is just going to be trying to scrounge up players as much as they can and filling in to fill out those 50 over 50 or 50 of 50 player capacities. And then at that point, you might see some early cities being captured, as far as some of the level 1s, maybe some level 2s, but for the most part, it's really probably going to be level 1s if anyone tries to do anything on day 1, even going into day 2. Now, also keep in mind, when you're loading into a new server, there is always the chance that you may encounter or run into players or alliances that are just attacking and just doing some kind of early PvP, mainly because of the way that the early game is, for the most part, set up. Which is that when you're playing IK, the challenge, I shouldn't say challenge, the thing to keep in mind is that you are in a situation where the entire map is open. So that's something to just consider, is that because the entire map is open, it means that players can go anywhere they want. You can go from one end of the map to the other. You can go and attack this city. You could, if you wanted to, counter siege someone who's going and trying to siege a city. You could go and attack hives if you want. You can attack any players that you want. So the thing is that, anyone and everyone is kind of more or less able to be engaged upon from day 1. Now, most of the time in any new server that starts up, you're always going to have some players, whether it's a couple individuals, whether it's a small group, maybe it's even an alliance's worth of players that are going to just go around and do PvP. It happens in every server. it doesn't matter if you come in with a big group of players or you just join that server as an individual, right? You are always going to have some amount of people that are just going to want to do PvP. They want to watch the world burn, whatever it may be. It's pretty standard. It's pretty typical. And again, it's not necessarily to be a turnoff. It's just, again, right, try to come in with some form of realistic expectations when you are starting out, is that it can happen. And what it also means is that your city might get attacked. Doesn't mean that you're going to get attacked a lot, and you might never get attacked. But it's just knowing that you could. Then from there, as you start progressing, maybe to about the first week or so, you're going to start noticing, and actually, honestly, before that, probably around day 2 or day 3, you'll probably start noticing, if you're looking at the rankings or the alliance leaderboards, you'll probably start noticing that some alliances are getting out in front a little early. And some of these alliances are probably starting to expand the power gap from where the number 1 is versus the number 2, 3, and then so on and so forth as you go down. This leads to a few things, mainly because of the way that kingdom builders are set up. In short, is that you are in a position where you need to really just realize or focus that when it comes to how the hierarchy is set up for new servers, is that there is no organization, right? There's no structure. So when you're coming in and playing in any server, keep in mind is that unless you're coming in with a big group, and when I say big group, I mean like a jumper group or coming in with a group of alliances, right, because you know leads. The majority of all new servers are basically just individuals that are running their alliances and operating within that server. Meaning that none of them initially have any idea what the other leader wants out of the server. For the most part, everyone's probably initial thought is more or less everyone just wants to try and keep increasing power and rank up on the leaderboards to be number 1. Right? That's kind of a very simplistic way of looking at it, but that is how the majority of players usually will come into leading alliances in Kingdom Builders, and especially in IK. So from there, then the assumption is that players that are coming in to a server, whether that's yourself or another, are needing to look at, how are the leaderboards shaping, right, within that first kind of few days or that first week. And again, then you'll start noticing that possibly some alliances are really breaking out. Now there may be a mil, 2 mil, maybe even 3 mil above the number 3, the number 4, whether that's the number 2 or just the number 1. And because players inherently want to not only progress their accounts, they want to improve, they also want to try, or I should say some, may also want to try and join higher ranked alliances. So you're probably going to see a little bit of volatility when it comes to the jumping, going from one alliance to another. This is things I'm sure some of you have already experienced. Now, because of that, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are going bad at all. It's just a standard practice that how these games trend in. You're going to see that. You're going to notice that. You might even be a player like that yourself, where you might just believe that you want to play in the highest ranked alliance or the best alliance, so you might consider switching or changing factions if that alliance, if the number 1 alliance is not in the current faction that you're in. So again, just some things to keep in mind when you're kind of going into the first week. And then at this point, you're probably somewhere along the lines of maybe at around a 70, I'd say around a 70 player cap, 70, 80 player capacity. So you guys are probably bringing in more players, at least if you're in an active alliance that is kind of near the top, maybe within the top 20 or so. And then from there, the entire time, you're really focusing on progressing your account, right? So you're doing your dailies, you are doing your Well of Time, you're doing your Mysterium, you're constantly working on improving your Immortal comps, and hopefully doing more 9 pulls from Hall of Immortals, so you can start trying to figure out which element composition you want to focus on early, whether you're free to play or you're spending money. And again, these are things that, especially early on, are good to figure out. And we'll definitely touch on that a little bit more later in the show. So now you're kind of getting past the first week, and again, alliances for the most part are probably somewhat initially stabilized, where it's taking longer for player capacities to increase. Therefore, you're now noticing more of kind of a level out or a plateau, at least temporarily. And then again, from there you can start paying attention to see, how wide are things like a power gap. I think these are always good, important things to look at, because if you can discern how wide or not a power gap is, right, it at least gives you some information, right? Like, is that server in any way, shape, or form organizing to try and control the power balance or to support it, or are they not? That can tell you something about your server that you're in. I think in addition to that, the challenge is that I think when new players come in to a server, you know, they don't know anything about server management or some of the kind of policies and politics that goes into play. And for I think most players, it's just, I'm just going to come in as a player. I like the game. It's enjoyable. I'm grinding it every day and trying to progress. And I'll just go along with whatever my leader tells me, right? So if my lead says we're going to go and cap this castle or this city, I'll start moving my city, my player city over there so we can help. If they tell me that I need to go and attack this player because of whatever reason, more than likely I'll probably go and attack that player, right? That is kind of the new player mentality that comes in, because if you're not being told anything else, especially if you're someone who's never played a kingdom builder before, you might approach it more of in a straightforward fashion, like you would if you were playing a shooter game, for example. And you're just you load in, you log in, you match make, you get into your match, and it's all pretty straightforward with what you're doing. It's all kind of singular. But with games like these, in the kingdom builder sphere, there's a lot more that goes into it than, of course, if players want to know that information, or even if they care to know that information beyond just playing, just logging in, doing your dailies, donating, reading up on Alliance chat if you care to do that at all. Probably less for World chat and Kingdom chat, I would imagine. And then from there, you're kind of getting in, like we talked about for like week 2. Week 2 of your server is probably going to look a little bit more of, maybe you're doing maybe some diplomacy is probably engaging at this point, and your lead is maybe talking with other leads. Maybe your alliance has half activity and you're considering doing a merge, maybe vice versa. And you guys are talking to other alliances that are interested in either merging into you or you into them. Outside of diplomacy, you're probably seeing at this point, you probably know more or less who the kind of PvP alliances or players are, and you'll probably have somewhat of an idea, of maybe who's going around and attacking. Have you been attacked or not? These are things to look at as well. And then we'll start kind of getting into, let me see, week 2. Then we'll talk about some of the big server-wide events here in a little bit. So now we'll get into like a general week 3. So week 3 comes around, and at this point, I think you're getting close to kill event now, which is Contention of Lords. And again, we'll touch on that in a little bit. But that will more or less kind of be the next big milestone for a server on whether or not they are going to be able to organize it or not. And more often than not, typically these events are not organized, and you're just having just kind of a free-for-all kill event in your server. This will probably be the first big activity loss in your server, as it actually is for every server. It just depends on how much mitigation you can do to retain as many players as possible. So then you'll be dealing with that. You'll probably figure out if some alliances are capturing more cities than others, and then from there you'll also see kind of how the server might start shaping here at about week 3. And then in week 4, and before we get into the next topics as well, in week 4, right, then you'll start kind of getting into the next thing, which is where I would say around week 3 or week 4 is probably the decision time. That's probably where you need to figure out if you want to keep playing in this server, or if you want to move on and possibly go to a new server. Right, and I say that because it's very important to enjoy the time that you spend playing. Right. I think the one thing I always tell people is that when you're coming into any game, I think the one thing that most people are is just enjoying the time that you spend in the game. I think no one really wants a game to be a chore, so to speak, for them, right? You want to come in because you're passionate about a game, you enjoy playing it, and you love logging into IK and doing everything that the game offers, right? Albeit anything new that comes out. And I think with that mindset in place, it's also important to remember that, well, I don't even know if I would say remember, but just to keep in mind that, again, players leave servers all the time for a plethora of reasons. Some may make sense, some may not make sense, depending on who's hearing it. But a player's enjoyment when you are playing is by far the most important. And I think that's why when you're starting out playing games, it's also important to, or especially for when you're loading into a new server, right? It's important to realize what the like who the majority of your player base is, and what that is free to play, right? 99% of all players in any server or kingdom are usually going to be free to play. And what that means is that is going to, your free to play base is by far the most important, because it's going to basically fill out the majority of your activity that you have in a server. So retaining that free to play base as much as you can is really important. And that comes in to things like the early game, because players, as I said, can decide to leave servers for any reason. It doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, I've heard players tell me that they left because, their alliance leader didn't send them any good educational mails, or they didn't know what to do, or they got attacked randomly by players on the server for no reason. I've heard people tell me that they've left a server because they got attacked one time, right? So keep in mind, like I said, there's a lot of players that are in your server or in a server, and again, they can leave for any reason. But what I will tell you is that the first big activity loss you're going to hit is when Contention Lords and Kill Event comes around. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later. So that kind of rounds out some of the generalizations there for the first month. And so what we're going to do now is, I think they should be opening up the voice channel chat shortly. What I would like to do, because again, I know that we have the nice raising of the hands feature that is available here in... Oh, actually, yes, I'm so sorry. If anyone has a question on anything I've touched on, again, we'll go into the next topic here shortly. I'm sure they should be opening up the voice channel shortly as well. But if anyone does have a question, again, there is the nice hand raise feature that you can utilize. So if you want to ask something, whether it's a question on something I've talked about, if I've touched on kind of on what to expect during the first month, please feel free, and then I will call on you. Let's see who we have here. Red Fear. Okay. Let's call on Red Fear. And I know it's like a radio show. I should be like, you've called in and dialed in. Okay, let's move on to the next one. How about Hawk? Let's invite Hawk and see if there's something he wants to ask or touch on. Hawk, what's up? Welcome. Just in case you are muted, if that does help. Is that a no? Okay. Let me see. How do I... Oh, cool. Move to audience. Okay. Let me see. Uni. Okay. Let me call on you. Gotta love this hand raise feature. It's so awesome. Yeah, Uni, go ahead. Keep in mind, guys, the request to... keep in mind, when you raise your hand, it's a request to speak. So, when you request it, I'll click on you to invite, and then you can go. Okay. Looks like that's a no. How about Tommy? Tommy, hey, welcome. That's okay. Don't be shy. I don't bite hard. So let me see. Mittul, RF71. Let me go ahead and invite you if you'd like to.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I have a little bit of question, like this thing, stage, what's actually be this is, like stage discovery. I really don't know. Can you just explain me?
Oh, as far as what we're doing right now, as far as what we're kind of talking about in the show.
Yeah, what's the stage discovery? Just what is this thing? How does it work?
Oh, the feature. So essentially,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, yeah.
it's 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 just a podcast. Essentially, it's kind of like a live radio show.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
they,
it's just a podcast or type. Okay, okay, thank you. I understand. And what's the topic of today's?
yeah. So it's actually at the top, above the where it'll say week two, the early game of a server. So we're just kind of talking about the early game expectations that you'll have going in to a new server in
Oh,
Infinity Kingdom.
oh, sounds cool. Sounds cool.
All right. Well, Mitsu,
Okay.
thanks, man. Appreciate. Let's see, Hawk. Okay, Hawk. Let me go ahead and call on you.
Hey, sorry about that. My laptop didn't let me speak. But
No, you're fine. Welcome, welcome.
hi, yeah, thank you. So yeah, I have a friend in the server. I just saw he was in here. What is this server, about? I just joined and I just want to know what it's about.
Yeah. So again, as we just said, I know for the previous person that was asking, again, we're talking about the early game for early game servers in Infinity Kingdom, and essentially expectations that you'll have going into them. And we're going to
So
talk
what
about a lot
is
of different things.
so what is this Infinity Kingdom?
It's a game.
Oh, okay, okay,
Got
okay.
you. Yeah,
Well, that's
there should be a download link. You can also check it out in the Play Store.
okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Hawk. No problem, man. Let's see here. Got a few more, and then we'll move on. Nath, go ahead. Or let me see. Hang on. Whenever Nath accepts, that's the most important part first.
Hello.
Nath, what's up? Welcome.
I feel like something strange going on with Discord because I'm like this other guy. I just randomly clicked this stage discovery and ended up here. It's like I've not joined this Discord before. And it's like, hey, Infinity Kingdom week two, and I clicked it. Have some fun. And I said like,
Oh, awesome. Yeah, yeah. I think actually part of that is because we went public.
yeah,
So
that'll probably be it. And like it's like opened up and I just found it on my Discord thing somewhere, some like new feature.
oh, awesome. Yeah, yeah. So we went. So we did a. Well, this week we did a public one. Again, Infinity Kingdom is just an MMO RTS strategy game. It's a kingdom builder. In short, it's something kind of new and upcoming right now in the market. Um, and is I mean, it's just a really awesome game. Don't know if you enjoy kingdom builders, but if you've played any others before, this is definitely one to check out.
Like on like it's like a phone game or something.
It is mobile. You can also
Yeah,
play on
yeah.
PC using an emulator as well.
Well, fair enough. Anyway, have a good day.
All right. Hey, no problem at all now.
Goodbye.
All right, let's see. Awesome. So that's actually pretty cool. Actually getting a lot more people, I guess. I wonder if that's why it says 33 listening, but then up here it says like 47, 48, 50, because there's people that are coming in from being able to kind of just chime in to the public version. That's actually really cool. So let's see here. Tilbor. I'm sure we'll eventually get a question related to Infinity Kingdom. That's always the hope. Tilbor, what's up?
Yes.
Welcome.
Can you hear me? Okay,
I do. You
because
sound
I
good.
don't know if. Okay, okay, thank. My question is not. Yeah, it's not a question, but it's a bit a suggestion because I'm playing the game like around 36 days. So what I want to know is there's a feature, okay, where you can see the teammates of a guild. Or for example, if I'm in an alliance, okay, and I want to know how many people are already in the alliance. I can see that from the guild board, but I don't know which people are in or not because I play other games similar to IQ. The, they give this feature to see on which people is in this guild. I don't know if there's a feature like that.
Okay.
That's
Sorry, so it's just
yeah,
so I have a good understanding, you're essentially just trying to look for a log of players that are leaving or incoming, or
exactly.
kind of status changes.
No, you can see this when you are in a guild. For example, if I'm in a guild with you, okay, I can see you. You are in my guild. But if I want to see some which people is someone else guild,
Oh, in another alliance's
but
guild.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
yes, no, I'm following you now.
Because that will help eventually to have an understanding how many people are. in this guild and if they are very active because I play, for example, me, I'm playing Love Mobiles, but you have the ability to see how many players is in this guild and to see the mighting, the ranking might, etc., etc. You understand what I mean? And but it's
Hmm.
very helpful to know is this guild is very active. For example, if you want okay, to move to another guild and you want to you check, for example, the mic, etc., etc., to see is this girl if this girl is better or yeah, okay.
Got you. Yeah, no, no, I definitely completely understand now.
So
So what I would
sorry.
say is,
Mhm. Sorry for my poor English because I'm still French, but
oh no, you're
try
fine.
to
No, no, you're fine.
okay.
I completely understand. Let me and actually, it sounds pretty good to me as well. What I will say, so let me answer that first. There is not currently a way where you can click on an alliance. So, as an example, like let's say you're in game, you go to the leaderboards, and then you click on an alliance. There is not currently a way where you can click on the alliance and then look at their member list, for example. I know that's something, a feature that we've seen in other games, and that's something I would even like for them to maybe consider eventually adding. So it's not a current capability, but maybe it could be in the future. Let me see here. So a few more. Let's do this. We'll take one or two more questions, and then we're going to move on to the next topic, and then we'll do another round of questions kind of at the end of each topic, and then we'll do our big live Q&A at the end. So let me see, Dolphin. Let's go ahead and send you an invite.
All right, you can hear me, correct?
Yeah. Hey, welcome.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I did recently just see this on the Discovery thing, but I am very intrigued in this now from what I've heard. So, I just have a mini question as if this will be like an RPG game or something.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I am happy that you decided to check out the stage channel, and glad that we're able to pique your interest, or anyone's for that matter. So this game is more of, again, an MMO strategy game. Ones that I would compare it to that are probably, ones that you might have seen ads for or have heard. What, like games like Art of Conquest, Rise of Kingdoms. I mean, those are ones that you would got State of Survival, West Game. These are other similar kingdom builders that you might have heard of, that are compared to Infinity Kingdom. But essentially, it's just an MMO. It's an MMO RTS strategy game where you are starting out as a player and you are building up your city, and then you are put on this big open world map where it's all players, no bots, and you're basically working with players to capture cities, gain territory, advance the timeline of your kingdom. You can they even have features in the game now where you can do alliance versus alliance battles against alliances from other servers that are not in your server, on kind of a new competitive custom map. They're even working on something like server versus server as well, which will probably come out later. And that's where you have your entire server's worth of players gets put onto another map with other players that are in other servers, and you just all go head to head. Think of it like Battle Royale, but just more grand strategy. That's typically the way
Yeah.
I like to try and put it. And these games, I mean, I'm sure like a lot of people have probably been playing games for a very long time, but this genre has always interested me the most because I feel like it has the most that I can actually engage in, compared to if I was just playing something like a shooter game that's pretty kind of straightforward and linear. So, but yeah, hope that was a decent explanation.
Yeah, thank you. That was really it.
Sure, no, thanks so much. Oh, guys, we'll take one more question, and then we're going to move on. Really awesome. We're at like 50 plus so far. Man, this public discovery thing that we did for the show was like really working. Love it. War Daddy 83. I know a War Daddy too as well.
Oh, what a coincidence.
Welcome.
Yes, sir. So I really wanted to ask this is first month into the game, going on closer to the end of my first month. I want to know at what point do I stop mid-maxing, and at what point should I make the final decision, particularly at what power level, to what uh, primary march I want to use. I'm sitting right around level 20, trying to figure out if I should stop mid-maxing now and try to catch everything up. And power level, I've really got, late game meta water and late game meta uh, earth, both of them. I'm trying to figure out should I make the decision now which one I want to make my primary, or do I still have time to decide? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. No problem. Always love to get some super specific in-game questions. So let me start off asking. So you're near the end of the month. Can you tell me? Oh, let me see here. Can you tell me what your comp is? What immortals you have in each of the comps?
Yeah. So near the end of the first month, I'm about to unlock Leonidas as far as the monthly things. I unlock him tomorrow. That will give me my front line of Earth comp being Leonidas, uh, Alexander the Great. Uh, I'll unlock Cleo. I have enough arena points to unlock her in 3 days. And then I also have Zimbabwe, I
Zenobia.
believe her name. Yeah, so I have
Okay.
her as my Earth comp, and then water I have Merlin, Hela of Troy, and then the two front lines is Ramses and At- Atita, I believe. I can't say his name
Okay. Attila.
properly. Yes. So
Gotcha.
those are my water. I'm trying
Okay.
to figure out if I should stick with them. They're roughly about the same levels and stuff like that. Roughly about power 27 for water and power 23 for Earth. But the Earth comp will change because I currently have Gilgamesh 3-star in there in the back line until I get Cleo in there.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. No, I think that definitely gives me enough to go off of. Thanks so much for the question. So, let me start with the first one, which is kind of what the min-maxing really is. Most likely, if you have Zenobia, if you have Alex, if you have Ramses and Attila, you probably spend a little bit, so I would imagine you have a little bit of a budget. With that in mind, what I would say is ideal frontline, ideal Earth kind of end game at the moment is still somewhat more kind of Charles, Alex, Cleo, and Zenobia. I think a lot of people are really favoring Alex a little bit more for the kind of additional passive damage that he gets, which is actually a buff that he got in one of the past updates along with the increased attack speed. So I think that's a little bit more favorable frontline. But again, it also just depends. If your Leo's already a little bit more leveled, then you could still stick with Leo and then eventually make the transition later. I think all the other pieces are fine. When it comes to water, again, I think ideally that's good. Obviously, you'll do the standard, I would imagine, standard replacement of Helen with Yoshi, unless you want to try and go for Ditto. But Yoshi will probably be a little bit easier. Then again, it also just depends on who you get. Again, if you're able to get the unlock, then Ditto will show up in the daily deals for you in the Pearl Shop, but Yoshi typically is probably still going to be the standard adjustment. And Yoshi is probably still going to be somewhat semi-comparable to Ditto. Again, I haven't seen anyone thoroughly test Ditto yet as far as that max level, so I'm sure we'll probably get some more information on that later if she ends up being more of a healthy endgame replacement to Yoshi. But for now, I would say with Ramses Attila, I would just say probably considering replacing Ramses with Harold eventually. But again, it's still fine. If you're still focusing on leveling up Ramses, it's not the end of the world, because I think with the ability that you're able to dismantle an entire immortal and then reinvest those resources into another one is one of the most amazing features about Infinity Kingdom out of the Kingdom Builders I've played. I wish this feature was in other games when I was playing them. So what I will say is I think everything is pretty on track with what you're building right now. As far as when it comes, so my opinion really, and even though Mysterium has changed, and really that's probably I think where the answer I'll give you will lie a little more in. With the recent update to 1.3, the adjustment in Mysterium is now forcing you to level up a second march. But keep in mind that even though the artifacts are easier to get, once you have an immortal at 7 stars, right, max skilled, it still falls under my line of thinking when it comes to free-to-play. If you spend money, it's different. You have a little bit of an easier time getting these things. So let me just talk about it from the free-to-play perspective. That's really where I play from. Even though I do spend a little, I still approach it from a free-to-play kind of more min-max perspective. So for myself, I don't invest into talk. Like Tower of Knowledge, I don't invest in Tower of Knowledge at all. Mainly because all of my purple crystals, or my soul shards, if you will, your universals, those all go into fishing in the market, specifically for leveling out my immortals in my primary comp. And then once I finish my primary comp, then what I'll do from there is I'll then fish just for epic immortals. right? That's my strategy. It's more long term, so it's probably not really as hyper tunnel focused as what some other players are doing. I'm sure some of you might just go into market, and if you don't see the immortal you have, you'll click next, and you just won't get anything. But again, the good strategy there is if you want to farm Lord experience or Lord EXP from the market, you can utilize that growth achievement, which is where anytime you load into the market, you should be purchasing everything that is purple gems, because you can then recycle it in your alchemy lab for 100% return. That will help you farm that growth achievement out faster, so you get not only gold from it, but you'll get free Lord EXP, which is going to help you get closer to your next Lord talent. So that's a big win there. As far as the purples, as far as the immortals that you'll keep while you're doing that, you can still keep the same ones. The reason I like doing that strategy is because it saves your refresh scrolls. If you're, like, let's say as an example, you have 2 immortals left in your comp that you need to max out. And let's say you go into the market, you don't see them, you click scroll refresh. Even though there's things that you could have bought for purples, you don't. Then your next page comes up. Neither of your 2 immortals are there. You do it again. And you're rinsing and repeating the same process. You're going to burn through a lot of your refresh scrolls over a shorter period of time. And yes, even though you still most likely will be able to fish a little more effectively or I guess I should say in a shorter amount of time, for the 2 immortals that you're missing in this example composition, you will eventually get to a point where you run out of refresh scrolls. And it will just not allow for you to pick up other immortals that you could have. Right, and then you're just going to be relying on waiting for refresh scrolls to come in daily from the daily activity chests, and then in addition, waiting for the daily refreshes that occur over a 24-hour period. So it's really up to anyone as far as how they want to go about doing it, right? If you want to do it that strategy, or if you want to do the other strategy where you just try and save as much of your refresh goals as you can, and then spend maybe your purple gems across the board, maybe on like the epic side, or maybe you do it where you're farming immortal shards for your 2 marches, right? There's a couple ways to do it, but again, I just wanted to give an example on how you can focus it, especially by taking advantage of that growth achievement. Now, as far as when to stop min-maxing, my recommendation really still is focus on a primary troop. The reason I say that is because if you start focusing... Now, there is an asterisk here. The asterisk I always tell people is it is okay to level immortals to 20. If you level your immortals to level 20 in your additional marches, that is mainly more for gathering purposes. If you level everyone to 20 and you just load in some gear with them, because keep in mind, you're going to get a lot of gear, right, that you're farming from your primary march. All of that extra gear that you get as you keep advancing in tier levels should be being equipped to your secondary, your third, and your fourth marches over time, right? Because it's free. It's free gear, right? And you're only going to be putting in, what is it, for... 16? So it's 16 gears per march. So you're going to put in 16 gears per march, and honestly, you could probably farm double that in one day, right? Just from your AP, or at least that. So if you think about farming blues, right, you fill all your second, third march immortals with blue, and then anything extra you get, you just keep doing the same thing. You recycle, you reinvest into leveling up or strengthening your gear for your primary march. But the main reason really is because if you keep leveling up your primary march, you will be more of an asset to your alliance when it comes to being strong enough to beat the garrison power on future cities. It also means that if PvP breaks out, you'll be in a better position not only to defend attacks via your garrison placement, but also if you want to go and do attacking. In addition to that, you get more honor the higher the level your march is, and that's really kind of the smaller factor. The bigger factor really is the power that you're attacking. But for the most part, you still want to be leveling up a primary. So I would say that, and again, keep in mind, this is all from a free-to-play perspective. So if you are... Now let me briefly talk about spending. If you're spending money, then that's different. You could potentially argue that it's okay if you want to do light investment going into a second march. Now, it does depend on how much you're spending, right? I mean, I know, like, in the server I play in S36, right, we have a lot of spenders. But we have, we had 3 players that just hit VIP 15 like a couple days ago. It was like on day 30, 31. And some of these players are building out, and they have been their second marches for a while. So, right, but again, these guys probably spent, 5, 10, 15 grand, who knows, right, how much. So, part of it also depends on how much you're spending and how much you're willing to invest into a secondary march. Again, I don't really rank the artifacts as, you need to really hyper-focus and try and grab those from the 4th floor of Mysterium. Obviously, you don't get access to that, of course, until you hit Chronicle 21, which is still going to take a while, right? It's going to be about 2 months into a server. So you're not going to get those right away. So I would just say keep focusing on your primary. That would be my main recommendation, in addition to the other points I mentioned. Now, if you, like I said, if you're more of a mid-high spender, then yeah, maybe you can make the argument that it's okay to invest into a second march. But I would say at least until because again, you can't even get access to the 4th floor to where you can start farming artifacts unless you want to buy them in bundles. Because there is one bundle that they have now, I think, which started out at $49.99 that you can get some from. So there's always that as well. Anyways, I hope that answered the question. That was a pretty long explanation there. Let me move on now so we can get on to the second point. And then again, we'll open the floor up at the end. So if anyone wants to ask any kind of a general question, you're more than welcome to. The next thing that we're going to talk about is going to be, and I'll briefly touch on this because some of it I did mention before, but we're going to talk about player and alliance trends that you're going to be seeing within the first month of your server. Alrighty, always got to get a quick tissue blow there. Okay, so let me see real quick from voice channel chat. I think some people are typing bacon's better with ketchup. Oh, God, I'm so done with my team right now. Okay, so let's talk about player and alliance trends that you're going to be noticing throughout playing the first month of the server. Now, again, some of these we did touch on a little bit before, right? Let me start with player trends. So, player trends, and this kind of comes into a little bit of the psychology of it. So anyone who kind of enjoys listening to that, if you enjoy psychology, if you enjoy kind of analytics or any form of consistent data, then you'll probably enjoy this. So when it comes to player trends, when you join a new server, some things that you'll notice is whether or not players want to progress and kind of farm their account versus players that just want to go out there and, as we talked about before, do PvP, kind of watch the world burn. That will also dictate what alliances they go to. You may also find that you may come across some players that just want to do nothing but be in the strongest powered alliance. For those reasons, you will most likely run into situations where players will progress their personal accounts, and then once they get strong enough, they will leave and then just go and apply for a new, higher ranked alliance if they can. Maybe they'll message a higher ranked alliance and say, hey, my power is here, can I join? They might try and preset it up so that way when they leave, they can immediately join after the 15-minute cooldown. You may have some players that want to be involved in maybe more than just the regular playing. That would come into the form of people who maybe want to apply for things like officer positions, maybe they want to assist and do diplomacy. Right, those are also good things to point out. If you're an alliance lead, and we'll touch on this a little bit more later, but let's say you're an alliance lead and you're noticing that some players are active in chat, or maybe they message you about certain things, those are also good player trends for you on the alliance leading side to take into consideration, to look at possibly doing something like promoting these people, or even just, maybe they want to do tasks for you, right? That's another thing that you can notice when you're really paying attention to people who are socially active. You can also look at things like World Chat or Kingdom Chat and look at players who are socially active and consider inviting those players or bringing them in to your alliance as possible recruits. Again, another way that you can notice just player trends in-game. Outside of that, you may also notice, and again, though I don't touch on this too much, I think it is just something to note because it happens in more or less every game. You're always going to have some form and level of toxicity. Now, the amount of toxicity that you'll have most likely will probably be shown in something like a World Chat for the most part, right? That's usually where the trolls kind of come out during the night. And those are things that, right, and keep in mind, you can block these players, which is a great feature that they've added in, right, where you can block them, you'll never see another post from them again in World Chat. You can also do something like level filtering, which is really nice. So, like, let's say you want to limit how much chat activity you see in game. You can go to World Chat. I think there's a settings icon in the top right corner after you load the pop-up or the pop-out, and then you can filter the messages that you see by lord level. That's kind of a nice way if you want to semi-mute or at least limit the amount of 99 plus messages that you're always seeing, especially if you're still on a pretty healthy and active server. Now, let's briefly talk about some alliance trends. And again, some of these are kind of going to be cross-referenced because some of them do affect the other and vice versa. But alliance trends you might see, like we've briefly touched on before, is, one, I think the good thing when you're going into a server is ask your leader what is their objective. What do they want out of the server? What is their plan? Do they just want to focus on trying to work peacefully and do more diplomacy with the server so they can progress their alliance so they don't really run their players in risk or in danger of being attacked? Do they want to be more PvP focused where they just want to go around and, like we've talked about, see the world burn? These are good questions to ask your lead, whether you ask it in alliance chat or if you don't get an answer in alliance chat, ask your leader, right? What is the purpose? Now, good organized alliances, in my opinion, would have some kind of a pre-drafted or pre-template message where they can easy copy-paste the moment a new player joins. That just kind of gives them a rundown of the alliance, maybe some server information, but for the most part, a rundown of what your alliance is. Now, this is something I would love for them. This is a feature that I'm sure some of you, if you've played other games, you probably have noticed that and I'll give an example from another game I've played, which is that when you've joined an alliance, it would send you a automated message that gives you a rundown. It's a custom message that you can make. Like once you're the leader of an alliance, you can go in there and it's like a welcome message, and it's like 1,000 characters, and you could customize it however you wanted to. And then when someone joined your alliance, that message would just on default be sent to them, and it would allow for you to list out a rundown of what the rules are for the alliance, any tips, best practices, any good information to know of. That would be an awesome feature. I would love to see them consider eventually adding into IK. But that's as far as kind of putting that work in now as a troubleshooting way to approach it is good. Because you want to make sure that when you're going into a server, you're going to try and join an alliance that is going to meet your expectations along with what you want. Now, for brand new players that have never played Kingdom Builders before, you may not know what you want. Hopefully, if you're someone new and you haven't played Kingdom Builders before and you're interested, these are going to be good tips for you going in. Now, keep in mind, most players that play any games in general, I would say at least for the majority base, probably do not take that level of time to really research or to kind of poke and prod to gather some of that information. But in these kinds of games like Kingdom Builders, I would say yes, definitely would strongly recommend it, because I think that it will help you out in the long run better. Now, if you're someone who's a veteran, if you've played Kingdom Builders before, you're probably a little more familiar with this, and it probably makes a little bit more sense based on what I'm saying. But if you're new, again, take a little bit of time. Trust me, it may save your playing experience early on, and you may decide on leaving that alliance to join another one because of how that leader wants to operate the alliance, right? So again, just some good food for thought. I would say other trends that you can see from alliances like we briefly talked about is, right, are there certain alliances that are being talked about in World Chat for maybe being aggressive or being more PvP oriented, right? Those are ones to steer clear of. Or if there's maybe coalitions being formed, or unions, if you will, right? Groups that are kind of banding together to maybe fight those players. Those are things that you can pay attention to and kind of discern some of that information that you're seeing posted there in World Chat. The other thing as well is, like, let's say maybe your alliance has a Discord that you can join, right? So you can get a little bit more information about the game. That's also something to take advantage of, especially if they have that posted on their declaration or their notice board for their announcement board sections, whether it's either of the two. Anyways, those are just some examples of kind of trends that you might see with early alliances. Not really going to talk too much about like the development portion for tech. That probably is really going to be probably another session that we'll do. But I'm going to pause for a moment. Does anyone have a question? And as I actually even before I even get there, even before I get there, just a show of hands, how many people have played, whether it's a Kingdom Builder in general or even just joined an alliance in IK, and how many people joined an alliance where you did not know what that alliance's objective was, let's say like within the first 24 hours? I'm just a show of hands, I'm curious. Like if you join an alliance, no matter what server you're playing in, and you did not know what that alliance's objective or what they wanted to do within the first 24 hours of you joining, or even if you were just told at all. I'm just curious for a show of hands if you've joined or if you've played in a server like that. Okay. So a decent amount, about 10, 11 so far. Okay, cool. So a good amount that have experienced that. Yeah, I mean these are pretty similar trends that you're gonna find. But anyways, let me open the floor up now. And does anyone have a question on player or alliance trends or something closely related to that? If you'd like to ask. And keep in mind, you can either raise your hand if you want to ask the question via voice, or if you want to ask it in the voice channel chat and type it out, because maybe you're in a situation where you cannot voice, you're more than welcome to. And I will read off of those along with prioritizing anyone who raises their hand for a request. Let's see here. As I rotate between my pulp orange juice and agua. Pulp is life. Oh, sorry, I just called on you. I don't know if you wanted to ask a question. Otherwise, I will keep it pushing, pimpin', as I say. Okay, let's go with Vials. Let me see. Vials asked something. Vials, just so you know, I sent you an invite to speak if you'd like. No? That's okay. All right. I will tune back in there. Let me take a look at the voice channel chat to see if anyone asked a question. The Boneless said, never heard of toxicity in a game ever. Yeah, I know, right? That's good stuff. Let me see. Targoth, if I don't see toxicity, am I the toxicity? That is an interesting perspective. Let me see here. Helila? That's okay. I'm butchering it. I apologize. You asked, is there any chance of having a feature that shows the last login date instead of present silent hyper? So that, I will say, is a top tier suggestion. That is something that actually I'm most likely going to be adding into my next feedback video that I put in as far as suggestions. So typically, at least on my channel, I like to do it once a week, or sorry, not once a week, about once a month. Every 4 to 5 weeks, I'll do a video where I'll ask people for suggestions or any feedback that they have on the game, and they'll put that information into the comment section. We'll organize it and structure it in a Google document so it's nice and pretty and it's professionally organized. And then I'll collect feedback on my Discord server as well. And then after about a week has gone by, if not less, we'll organize all that information, and then I'll make another video going over the most requested pieces of feedback, and then we'll present that. So again, for myself as a content creator, right, I have access to some people on the IK team that I'm sure other members just don't. And so I've always been a big believer that if you are going to send feedback or any kind of constructive criticism on features or ideas or suggestions, you should try and do it in as of a professional way that you can. Because as a developer, right, if you hear someone give you some feedback like, hey, you need to improve the alliance system, it doesn't work, you're not going to take anything from that. Right, you have to be very detailed and very specific, and so I like to try and just do all the work for them. I'll make a video and I'll walk them through visually what the piece of feedback is, and then I'll also put it into a document that's outlined. And that's how we like to give feedback, because I think as a developer they appreciate that more, and they're more receptive to your feedback, especially if you can provide a video aid where you're really explaining and doing it in a little more justice than maybe what just sending a document or something that's kind of in an essay format would do. So yes, so again, you can look out for that if you'd like. I would tell me I feel interested. The 2 day. Sorry, let me see here. A few more. So yeah, so again, if you're interested in that, again, you're more than welcome to check out my YouTube channel or even join our Discord. Again, we do a lot of that, and at the end of the show, I'm going to give a shout out to the other content creators as well because I like to make sure we're giving everyone love. Give me 1 sec. I know there's a couple more questions in the voice channel chat. Let me call on Tilbor because he did have his hand up. So Tilbor, I'm going to go ahead and call on you again. Tilbor, hey, welcome.
There's a way to add another widget because those we have is they are really useful. But the widget that I want, if there's ability to add, is a widget when, for example, if you do research, if you're doing researches, sometimes when you didn't check the building, you didn't know if you finish it. But there is a possibility that a widget in which there is the research features and the dragon training features also. Sometimes when it's done, you don't know if the dragon is already finished training, so you can it will be useful to get it on one click. This will be better also. And my question also, why there is a ties, gold ties? It could be useful also because yeah, God is more raw than green gems in this game. That's what I noticed. Hello.
Uh, Sorry, what was the last question there about the green
Okay.
gems? Can you repeat that?
Okay. Yes. Why there isn't gem gold tile? I mean tiles for gold resources like wood, stone, lumber, or why there isn't gold? Because only on your facilities you can
Oh,
do
I see.
gold.
Okay, I got you. I
Okay.
got you. Yeah, no. So let me talk about the first one. Thank you so much for asking. I appreciate. So let me start with the first one here, which is kind of the interface idea. This is something that actually has also been requested by, I would say, a good amount of players that have asked for that as well. I think what he was asking was about the interface. So if you're outside of your city or even inside, you'll notice that on the left middle portion of the screen, or the far left but middle of the way down, you have that little interface where you can upgrade buildings, you can train troops, you can heal, you can manage your marches and do some garrisons or withdrawals. I think what he's saying is he would like to see a tab there where you can also manage the dragon and manage research. And actually, it would be cool if you could even manage your treasury, right? If they could make that into like a fourth tab or something where you can manage those three things. I think that's an absolute fantastic idea. It's also something that we have jotted down and we have talked about before, and it'll most likely be going into our next feedback round 2 as well. So, yeah, could not agree with you more there. In regards to the gold portion, so let me give a little bit of a history lesson here, and I think anyone who's been playing IK for a while, you might appreciate this if you didn't know about this information before. So the way that IK was originally set up, this was during the beta server phase. So this is prior to Server 8. Server 8 was the last beta server that came out before global release hit on January 28th of 2021 for Server 9. Now, before, and I'll take this back because I started playing Server 4, so about halfway through beta, a little less than half as far as remaining. In Server 4, you actually had, so the capital cities actually gave about 3 to 4 times the amount of gold that they give now. In addition to that, capital cities also actually gave you research and building upgrade speed debuffs. Or I should say buffs for speed ups. Something they don't give anymore. They switch it to Immortal Attack. Now, you've never been able to gather gold on the map. Part of the reason is because gold is more of just that finite resource. And I think it is... Now, keep in mind, you can gather gold on the map in other games, right? In other games if you've played. Again, IK obviously is just different in that regard. Gold is more of a finite resource. And I think part of it is because, the best guess I could really give is that part of it is just due to them wanting to kind of slow down progression, so it takes longer to get to things endgame. And I think them limiting gold is one way to do that. To be honest, I honestly, well, sorry, without double punning or double intending my word usage there, I think myself that they probably didn't really need to change gold all that much, mainly because of how much it costs already just to upgrade the dragons, right? As a free-to-play player, like, let me just give you an example, right? As someone who's, for the most part, playing in a free-to-play capacity, though light spending, I haven't done any spending when it comes to dragon upgrade speeds. I will say the one thing I do get, which is just a 7-day gold supply, but again, I think that's like 520k. Let me see what the actual thing is on it. It's, you get 7 consecutive days of, oh gosh, I can't even see what the max is. I think it's something around 520 or 520,000, something like that. Maybe it's a little more. I'm sure someone can probably tell me because I'm just not even thinking of the appropriate number. But it is still a low number that you get, right? And as far as once you start leveling up your buildings for your dwellings, right, you're going to end up getting way more gold on those per day, especially once you start getting those to like that around that level 20 or level 30 and up. Even just from having maxed, like from having, you could probably get, even you probably start getting close to like a mil gold a day, probably once you start getting your dwellings up to maybe around, I don't even know, 34, 35, something like that. I think Ask was telling me that was what the average was. So you might even be able to get close to 1.5, 2 mil gold a day from having all level from having 6 level 40 dwellings. So it's a good amount that you're going to get. But even with that, I mean, my dragon, I'm like, what, 30 days in on my new account? My dragon's going to 26. And that's one dragon out of 5. Out of 7, but really more so 5 that are actually attainable currently. Unless you're VIP 15, then you also have access to Shadow. But again, for at least the average free-to-play, you're really going to have access to 4 dragons. Because the 5th one is also kind of gated. You have to kind of pay a little bit for that, as far as use more currency than you probably would want to. So, in retrospect, 4 dragons are essentially really attainable as a free-to-play. It's going to take a really long time to level even 1 dragon to 40, right? I mean, there's players on older servers that have been playing for a really long time, and even a lot of them don't have, and even for spenders. So that's why I say, in my opinion, I don't really think there was a need to lower the amount of gold that you get from buildings or other ways that you can get gold. Just because I think it's already going to take so long to get it that it's not really going to have any extreme impacts on the game or a player's gaming experience. Just because you have to use it for boost, for immortal boosts, and then again you also have to use it for dragons. But again, that's just the way the game is set up to answer that question in short. Tilbor, is that there's just no gold gathering tiles. Now, if there was, well, there's not specific gold gathering tiles. You can get gold from contextual relics after the event ends from the special tiles, but there's not base resource tiles that are in the game at the moment. Let me see if anyone's asked a question on the voice channel chat. I think there was a few there. It's my boy Ice. Let me see. Diablo asked, so do you think it's viable to try and keep servers balanced and limit gameplay so much in a game where the SAS faction is still so far away? I will answer that. I'll answer that at the end. I'm just trying to stay somewhat semi-related to on topic for player and alliance things. Let me see here. Yeah, that would be... can you let me know where I can find your channel Discord? I think I have it in my motto, Bad Wolf. Or if you want, you're more than welcome to DM me and I can shoot you a link. The dude asked, hey boss, I'm so sorry to interrupt. No, not at all. But I'm not understanding what we're talking about. Is it okay if you would tell me? I feel interested. So yeah. Oh, sorry, someone already answered for you. Okay, cool. Let me scroll down a little bit more. I'm definitely going to save that question that you asked, Diablo. So let me just put this in my handy-dandy notepad. Blue's Clues reference for anyone that enjoyed Blue's Clues growing up as a kid. And if you didn't, shame on you. Okay, let me scroll down and see if there's anything, and then I'm going to move on to the next topic. Let me see, someone said, what are the things to look out for when entering a server to make sure that the server is healthy and prone to be active after several months? I've seen several servers die out in 3 weeks. Yes, Lido, a lot of us have, for sure. I'm going to copy that message, your question, so I can answer that a little bit later. And then let's see if there's any other questions before we move on. Yeah, Elite said IK, in my opinion, is very balanced. Is a very balanced game for free to play and pay to win. You can recycle your unused immortal shards into gems. It's one of the best. Oh yeah, 100% one of the best options in the game. What is Blue's Clues? Oh, sweet summer child. Hey, awesome response. That's just funny. So that's something like my aunt would say. Okay, let's talk about now the next one, which is how to discern for things to keep an eye on. Right? How to discern what's going on in your server and some things to keep an eye on, and then we'll open the floor up again for any questions. So when you are starting out, and again, we have briefly touched about this a little bit as well, but some of the important bits is that when you are starting out in a brand new server, some things that I like to keep an eye on is, one, what's being talked about in World Chat. And again, what I really mean is like after day 2, after day 3, when the mass advertisement promotions that are being copied and pasted every 5 or 6 seconds are starting to die down. Once that happens, and you can really start looking at not only Kingdom Chat, which is for all 3 of the factions, every player on the server, and then you have, World Chat, and then you have Kingdom Chat, which is just players from your faction, whether that's red, blue, or green. I would say look at those things and figure out if figure out just what I shouldn't say figure out, but pay attention to what's being talked about. Right? Is there a little bit more aggressive of chats? Are people trying to work on, diplomacy? Are they looking, are people posting chords for targets? I mean, whatever it may be, right? Try and see what the direction of the server is going in from getting a little bit of insight from World Chat. In addition to that, something you could do as well if you'd like is to actually message the leaders. So like you could message the top 5 or top 10 leaders and just say, hi, I'm a new player. I'm just curious, is there a server Discord? Is there a is there a council chat set up to have discussions amongst the top alliance leaders? All right, is the server safe? Is it not? Right? Don't be afraid to ask those questions. I can tell you, you will have a better gaming experience for yourself when you're just starting out if you do take a little bit of time to ask those questions, because you're going to learn a lot from how a server is shaping in the first week, the second, the third, and the fourth week, depending on how long you stay or if you stay, compared to asking those questions rather than if you did not. Now, from that, I think it's also important to keep an eye on the honor leaderboard. So, because I think the honor leaderboard, now for anyone who's watched any of my server analysis videos where we take a look at like a batch of 8 servers at a time, and we'll kind of do like a quick run through of them, pay attention to the honor leaderboards. Because if you end up noticing that you have a lot of players, or you're starting to see players climb those boards, right, and check them daily is what I would recommend, right? It takes about 5 seconds. You just click on your profile picture, you click ranking, you click Lord Honor, and then you're there. From there, if you see a lot of players that are climbing high on the honor boards, whether you check it once a day or once every 2 days, that will also give you a direct indication on, is there a lot of fighting on the server? Is there a lot of PvP? That might be the answer you're looking for on, do I need to get out of Dodge now? Or do I need to maybe get a little more information before I make that decision? Now, keep in mind, a lot of players just want to play. It is difficult for anyone to consider restarting an account from scratch, especially if you're just starting out and playing a game, because you enjoy the game. What I have found, more often than not, is that players' experiences are ruined, right? Like think about it like this. I'm a new player. I come across the Play Store, and I'm like, wow, this game has good graphics. It's a strategy game. I'm scrolling through the pictures, and I'm watching the quick little 45-second promo video. This is dope. Let me download this game and try it. I download the game. I get put into the current newest server that's open, and I'm just leveling my account. I'm just clicking on stuff. I'm super hyped. I'm juiced, and then I try to join an alliance. I get into an alliance. Now, from here, there are any number of scenarios that can play out. Your alliance is inactive, and you don't care enough to join another alliance. So you're like, okay, now this is a turnoff. I'm going to leave the game and stop playing. Let's say your alliance is semi-active. Okay, you're going to stick around for a little bit of time. You still don't maybe consider going and joining another alliance. You're just going to play it out. It's 50-50 on whether you stay. You join a super active alliance. Okay, now you're really engaged. And now, what happens with that alliance? Are they just going to decide to do PvP? Are they going to decide to not take any cities? Actually, start learning more about the game. You leave. Maybe you quit, or maybe you try to join another alliance. Maybe you're in a really active alliance that is doing a lot more. So maybe you're going to stay around longer. Just in these 5 examples, 2.5 to 3 of them could potentially end in a player leaving a game within the first maybe day or two or couple days after downloading it. This is, and don't get me wrong, this is a standard way that the player psychology is going to work, probably when you're playing any game. But in Kingdom Builders, and especially in Infinity Kingdom, I think it's important for us to take a look at those things because these are situations that can play out when you're going into a new server. That's why it's important. Or let's say someone leaves an alliance just because the leader doesn't send out any informative alliance mails. Right? People can leave alliances for any reason, like we talked about earlier in the show. That's why it's really important when you're coming in as a new player to, one, don't be afraid to leave an alliance and try joining another one. Don't be afraid to reach out to leaders and interview them. Ask them, right? Are they deserving of your activity? That's another thing. Right? Ask them what do they do for their alliance, right? Do they send out informative mails? Are they looking to try and progress in the server? Do they want to capture some cities? Now keep in mind, capturing cities kind of gets into its own other topic because, you know, if you have a few alliances that just capture all the best cities, then the alliances that are lower ranked than the top ones are just probably not going to have the best playing experience, or they may not have the best playing experience, I would say, because it just means that less cities are going to be available. It means that they might not get access to higher RSS zones, which means that you're not going to be able to gather higher tiles as your Lord XP increases. And now I feel like I'm talking about some more advanced stuff. But let me just start there, or stop there, I should say. I don't want to overload anyone. But these are things to really consider and think about. God, I could like literally make a session about like 20 different interrelated subjects that go on. Anyways, let me move on to, where was I going with that? Let me see. Discerning. Okay, yeah. So we talked about a little bit of kind of how you can discern as a player when you're coming into a server. Now, let me open the floor up for this one. We have, I think, 4, more like 3 other topics that we're gonna talk about. Actually, no. Actually, 2 other topics. Okay, yeah. So we're getting kind of close to the end here. The other 2 topics we're going to talk about is organizing your server early, and that's really going to be the bread and butter, right? That's probably, these next 2 topics are probably, in my opinion, going to most likely be the most engaging topics that we do talk about, which is going to be organizing your server early. So if you have management experience, if you're an officer, if you're a leader, if you're running a jump project, this is going to be the topic for you, because I'm going to talk about a little bit of managing a server, some good tips and practices, and then we're going to talk about the big server-wide events like City Siege, Supreme Alliance, Contention Lords, and then King of the Hill. But before I get there, does anyone have any questions when it comes to, you know, what to discern, what to look at in a server so you can get a good gauge on whether or not you're staying, on how to acquire information from a server, as far as when it comes to alliances to join, right, the health of yourself as a player? If anyone has a question related to that, please feel free. You can raise your hand, or if you want to type it out in the voice channel chat. What am I at, 10:48? Loki with the pretty balanced gift. That's nice. Damn, Yummy did it. Given those clues. Let me see. Diablo said, while talking about servers dying out, don't you think providing a one-time only migration ticket to each account would be a nicer thing to do? I'm gonna be honest. I don't actually hate that idea. I actually don't think that's the worst idea ever. I mean, even in other Kingdom Builders I played before they even put in migration restrictions in, you could freely migrate. If you look at other games, some other games you could freely migrate to servers. Now, I don't think migration should be free to everyone. I do like the idea, though, of giving a one-time only ticket use on new accounts, right? So anytime someone makes a new account, if you want to do a one-time migration of that account to a server that is over 90 days old, right, and you're obviously within the limits, I actually think that's somewhat of a decent idea. I might want to think on it a little bit more, but at least at face value, I don't think that's an awful idea. So yeah, but I don't want to. I don't want to expand on that anymore, just because I want to try and stay on topic. But I'm gonna write that down, Diablo, because clearly you are asking quality questions right now. Hang on, let me. I gotta put down who asked these questions to as well, so I can make sure to refer back. Sorry, let me look at if anyone has a hand raised. Okay, we have one here. Tilbor. Let's go ahead and bring Mr. Tillian.
Yeah, I forgot to ask this question earlier. It's about the castle skin.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yep, because yes, can you give us some more details about, because yeah, I know there's only one way or two way to get them by buying packs or when completing an event. I don't know if there's a third way to have castle skins. Maybe for example some games give you the ability to have new castle skins when you finish upgrading your castle to the max level. I don't know if it's the same for Ike.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sure. No. I'll briefly touch on that. So I mean, in short, you can go to, so like let's say you zoom out of your city and you click on, and then you click on your city, you click on decoration. It'll tell you all the ways that you can go about getting those skins. So like you can look at one, and which is the like just the first one you look at, which is the efflorescence, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It'll tell you, right, you get it from the Spring Fiesta event. So it'll show you, you can click on any skin, you can even just click on the information icon, and it'll also tell you where you can get it, or you just click the plus icon, which is on the right side of the screen, to the next to where the line that says decoration item, and it'll also tell you where you can access castle skins. And then you can read the information on those events. Let me see, to Claire. Let's go ahead and call on you. To Claire, hey, welcome.
Hi. Thank you. I heard it. I came in late, so I don't know exactly what you were talking about earlier, but I heard about what you said about the interview. Now, why isn't that like just a button? Like, where you could just look for the leader, there's an interview button, click it, and there's either quick questions or custom ones that you want to say.
Okay. So you're asking as far as like something set up when you're applying to the Alliance, maybe setting up something like a interview page where a player has to answer some questions? Or something different?
Not the something different. More like the leader has to answer the questions.
Okay. Okay, got it.
You said to encourage people, to at least new players, to ask questions for the leader, but I know in my experiences, when I was new at these sort of games, that was an option. I had no idea. So I ended up, as you said, joining alliances that weren't as active, but I was too stubborn to leave.
Yes.
Which
yes.
eventually made me leave the game. And should there also be a way for them to see how active the alliance is when applying?
Yeah, so I think both points are really good. I think something that is an example, and let me just move you back now. So let me answer both. The first one is I do think that if they added something eventually, in whether it's the next update or one after, where it's a feature, for example, where the alliance, and I probably did say this before you joined, but I'll retouch on it briefly. So in some games, right, they have a feature where you can basically send a introduction mail out. It's something that's passively sent out automatically when a new player joins an alliance. And maybe you have 1,000 or 1,500 characters available, and that can be where you as the alliance leader or guild leader write out maybe you write out what the expectations are of players, you write out what the rules are, you give information on what the alliance's focus is, right? And that is, I think, a lot of that information that you were mentioning or asking about to be sent out, or if it's just presented. Now, also, sometimes you might have I think the example here in IK would be utilizing your notice board. because you have two announcement boards for your alliance. You have the notice board, which is the internal one just for your members, and then you have the declaration board, which is the public one. So that's, as an example, if you click on the rankings and you click on an alliance, that's the one you would see visual publicly, that anyone can do just via clicking. So I think those are good points. I do think that's actually something I would love to see them add in a future update, and I think has a lot of merit to your point. And I think it's interesting with you explaining how you had a similar situation where you joined an alliance and you left because of these reasons. I think it's just a testament that goes to a lot of the things I've already spoken about, where you'll have players that will leave an alliance or potentially leave a server and go start a new account for any number of reasons. And that's why one of the things we talk about a lot is player retention. And I think informing and educating players is something that is almost an afterthought. I can tell you for other big games that I've played that fall under the same genre, I'll look at other content creators, or I'll look at other what I viewed as successful kingdoms or servers that were being managed, really missing out on the player education portion. Right? The information game is by far the most important part of how you're able to keep players in your server. Right? You have to take time to educate players and to inform them of tips, of best practices, of server statuses, so they're up to date on information. They are more likely to stay in a server. Players will always be more likely, at least on the majority end, to stay in a server that is constantly informing them and keeping them up to date, because it allows for them to engage in another medium outside of just playing. So that's something that I like to talk about as well. Something that we focus a lot on in the server I'm in S36. And I know there's other servers that are trying to do those things as well. I mean, given the game is still new, I think there's only 46 servers out at the moment. And it's, it's coming on its 4th month. I don't even know if I'd call it an anniversary. But the game is still new. And like I said, I think they're doing a lot of things well based on features and formats and modes that are out currently for how young the game is compared to other ones that I've played. I'm gonna do 2 more questions for Permanink and Tosha, and then we'll move on to the next topic. And then again, we'll do a big open floor Q&A at the end, and that will just, again, we'll answer any and all questions as well. Permanink, let me send you an invite. Okay, we'll wait a few more seconds. There we go.
Oh, sorry, I'm here.
You're
Can you
good.
hear me?
Hey, welcome.
Sorry, this is the first time being in one of these. I'm sorry if I'm proposing something that's not part of your topic, but I kind of joined late. But I think there's a huge feature that needs to be implemented in the game, and that is changing up the way that cities can be abandoned. And has anybody talked about that before?
I don't necessarily know if anyone has really made, I'd say, a big point on it. But go ahead.
Well, one instance that happened recently, we had just overnight for the majority of our members, one of our cities was just abandoned. So we woke up the next morning with this notification that someone abandoned one of our cities. And so we were trying to figure out who did it, and then realized ultimately that we could find it in the log. And the horrible thing about it was our leader who did it by accident. But our first concern was that it was someone that did it maliciously, like one of our R5s.
Yes.
And so being that the game has all these pop-up prompts for things like, are you sure you want to refresh the market because there's an immortal here you can summon, or are you sure you want to get rid of this legendary armor? Why is there not some kind of confirmation prompt? Especially now with the recent update where you can actually delete one of your characters and it gives you a prompt where you have to type the word S in a box. Like, 2 things I would highly recommend them change is, for one, make it to where only the leader can abandon the city. And even then, just in case he's super sleepy or drunk or whatever, have a box that pops up that says, type something here, or a slider bar or something. And then even at that point, it'd be nice if you got some kind of glowing warning, like when you're being attacked, that, hey, somebody's abandoning one of your cities, to let people know so that someone can stop it or something like that.
Yeah. No, I think those are two good points. From my understanding, I want to say only leaders. Leaders should be the only people who are actually able to abandon cities, unless they changed that in a recent update. I know even if you look at like the Alliance territory page in your, well, I guess in your Alliance, there's an information tab that's right on the territory info, and it does list
Uh-huh.
there where it says Alliance leaders can abandon a territory occupied city, which takes 1 hour to fully abandon. Now, again, I don't know if they've changed
Right.
that, and maybe officers can too. I've just always been under the impression that
No,
only leads can.
no, it is officers can do it because we've had other people do it by accident, but
Oh,
we've been
interesting.
able to
Okay.
stop it. And
And
the other weird thing is too is it's right next to the location link. So if you're clicking on the location link, you could which I think is what happened to our leader,
okay.
is he was trying to click on the location link and actually tap that button by accident. But yeah, like in our server, we've had a lot of war, and so we've also had a lot of new members join, and we're trying to put better people in a leadership role. And one of the things we're concerned about is, how well you can trust someone that might be coming from a different alliance that we were at war with, and whether or not they might, be there just to disrupt things and abandon cities overnight, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think adding an "Are you sure" button or some form of a confirmation is definitely a good idea. I would say for something as serious as abandoning in a city.
Yeah.
I think for the devs, I'm sure from their perspective, they probably figured, well, an hour is enough time to figure out if you want to go forward with it or not. But I still
Right.
think to that effect, with something as big as abandoning in a city, I think adding in kind of an "Are you sure" or just an extra gate to go through
Yeah.
could
Because,
definitely
like
be
I
good.
said, if somebody does it on accident, no one else knows. It'd be one thing is like if you got a pop up, at least even in your alliance chat, that says, "Hey, so and so initiated abandoning a city." And anyway, so I just thought that was kind of a crazy thing that hasn't been implemented yet, and don't know if anybody else had a similar issue, but it'd be cool if everybody could kind of push them to do something like that quick.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely appreciate the feedback, Permanent. Thanks, man.
All right, man. Thank you.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, we'll call on one more, and like I said, and that was a good one too. So let's call on Tosha. I think that's who I have next. Yeah, man, a lot more engagement on this week. Really awesome. Tosha,
Hello,
welcome.
hello.
Hey, welcome.
Hi, how's it going? So I'm a former Rise of Kingdoms player, and I quite like some of the systems that they implemented. I was just wondering if in the future you're gonna make some changes regarding like troop movements and like gathering immortals, so something specific to those type of areas.
We got you. Okay. Okay. Yeah, let me. No, thank you so much for the question. Let me touch on. So, I'll probably have to preface with two things. But let me see here. You said gathering. Okay. Oh gosh, I'm suffering from STML currently. Sorry, you said gathering heroes are kind of specialized immortals, and then I'm sorry. What was the first one you said?
Yeah, like free roam troop movements. So
Okay.
kind of
Yeah.
I
Open
saw
field.
like the updates. It's gonna be like a upcoming kill event, something like that. So obviously, it's I played the game for like 2 or 3 years. During kill event, it's quite fun to just run around, killing people and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. No. Thanks so
I
much.
think I think it would greatly implement the game as well, because now you can only, I think, send the troops back and forth. You can't really roam around with them or anything like that. So I just wondering if you have any plans regarding in the future to make something similar or.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you so much for asking. Let me touch on those, and I'll just send you back to the audience for now. So first and foremost, let me just say I'm not a dev, and I am not a part of the official team in any capacity. I'm just a fellow content creator that has some experience playing Kingdom Builders and other games, and I'm more so just kind of hosting the show. But oh gosh, sorry, excuse me, I had to sneeze real quick. But I will say that anything as far as information that I do get, feedback, suggestions, right, we always, at least for myself, I always love to take that information seriously, and I mean, even while we've been going, I have a couple pages worth of notes, just from people that have asked questions or from feedback, suggestions, or points that are made. I always like to organize that as best I can. So what I will say is, let me start with the first thing you mentioned, which is really, I think you're referring more to like the open field PvP. So this is something that has been asked. It is something that has been talked about. What I will say, and this is just in my opinion from playing similar games and that game as well for a very long time, is I'm very iffy on open field PvP. The reason I say that is because in small numbers or in small player batches on your screen, open field PvP is actually a really awesome feature and concept. When you have a lot of people on the screen, however, examples of this, as I'm sure you're familiar as others are, when you have things like King's Land open up, when you have Zone 4 and Zone 5, when you're doing altar fights, usually, if not most of the time, you will find that once you get, 20 to 30 people, with 5 marches each, all fighting it out, it's really laggy. I mean, I myself have played in, 6 or 7 KVKs in that game, other SVS variants and others, and anytime I've played in any kind of an open field situation where that mechanic is implemented in the game, the lag is just, in short, it's horrendous, right? It's almost inoperable. And I know that more often than not, there's more complaints more than there is praise for the feature. Again, in small batches, awesome, because you could still see everything. There's not a lot of lag, if not any at all. Personally, I just think that the feature is like ahead of its time, in my opinion. It's like the current phone capacity along with connection speed capacity or networking is just not up to par yet for that feature to really be implemented in the best way possible that it can be. So if you're asking my opinion on would I rather play a game that has something like an open field mechanic in it where I'm really not going to have a good playing experience in big, large battles because the game is going to be somewhat unplayable or extremely laggy, versus being able to play in a big battle-like situation where I can see hundreds of players all in the same area on my screen and there's little to no lag, I'm definitely going to take the latter every single time. Like I said, I think the feature's great, but I feel like the implementation, it's like it was overhyped. And again, that's my viewpoint on it, not only based on my experience, but a lot of my friends' experiences as well. And again, that doesn't mean that everyone is going to have that same experience, but I think more often than not, a lot of players are probably having a similar or have seen a similar experience happen where games that implement those types of features can become somewhat unplayable at times. And that is just a big turnoff. So again, I like the way that IK has set up their PvP because I still feel like I get a lot of PvP love out of the current mechanic. Whether it's shoulder to shoulder, there's a lot of little micro mechanics that you could do on the PvP end. Those are things I really enjoy. And I like the animations when you attack someone, you get a victory or a defeat. I would like for them to kind of eventually add in something like a more expansive battle report so you can kind of discern more stats, and then you can do a little bit more of kind of meta trial and error testing. But outside of that, that would just be my touch up there. When it comes to the thing you mentioned about gathering heroes or specialized immortals, I would say they have some of those when it comes to some that are more like healing based, tank based. But if you're specifically asking for something that's more, a gathering specific immortal or something like that, don't get me wrong, I do like that idea of adding in an immortal that maybe has a skill that's more focused on that. But at the same time, even if they don't, it wouldn't bother me because of the way that Infinity Kingdom is set up, where they kind of have flat rates across the board when it comes to your gathering and the speeds that they have, whether you control the territory or not, the other benefits that you'll get from the alliance tech that you upgrade. I just think that in some, like, don't get me wrong, I think there's some features in some games that we as gamers look at and we're like, yes, that is a feature that should be in every single one of these games across the board. And then I think on the other kind of devil's advocate side is, are we really trying to just reskin a game that we've played for a while and we like over to every other single game that we're now playing and we like, that we see potential with? And so for me, I always try and tread with a little bit of caution. Like, I think things like an Alliance versus Alliance event, something like an SVS, a Kingdom versus Kingdom, right? Those I think are great features that should be in every Kingdom Builder game. Now, again, some people might feel differently depending on how those modes or game types are set up. But at least the concept and the feature itself I like across the board. But when it comes to trying to implement other specific things, I think that there's a need for individuality and for games to have somewhat of their own uniqueness. And I think for me, that's what's really attracted my time and my energy and my passion over New Infinity Kingdom. I think probably for a lot of people that are here as well. Albeit anyone that just clicked on it because we're publicly doing. Which, in that case, I'm definitely going to have to come up with a different week title next week so it can be more visually appealing on the public stage channel boards. But outside of that, I guess that kind of answers the second part there. Let me see. Yeah, Ben Barl's like, yeah, the Kingsland lag. That's so bad. I know, right? Spaghetti, you're famous now. Not really. Before we kind of get into anything else, let me talk about one of our next two topics, because I just want to try and get through these a little quickly, so that way we can then spend a little bit more time kind of doing some more quality Q&A with any of the players who are still here. And then I can also provide some more good information as well for covering our next two topics. So the next one we're going to talk about is server-wide events. I wonder if I can edit this too. Oh, interesting. So I can actually change. Let's do this. That's pretty cool. Let's see if this will work. And let me see. Organizing. Oh, cool. Awesome. Oh, I just changed the topic. I'll start doing that now once we get on to the new topic. I didn't realize it would auto-update like that. Cool. Okay. So now we're going to talk about kind of organizing your server a little bit. And like I mentioned before, this is going to be kind of the nice bread and butter point for players that are officers, if you're leads, as I've talked about, if you're in a jump project, if you manage one, if you're considering starting one, if you're going to a new server and you would like to try and organize your server, or even if you're in a current server that you think has some potential but you're just looking for other ways on how to manage it to improve your server's health, morale, and activity, that's what we're going to talk about now. So let me start off with probably the most basic fundamental thing that I personally feel a server should have. Now, one, which is pretty somewhat, I guess, obvious, and then it might not be for some, but I do think that every server should have a Kingdom Discord, or a server Discord. And that should be, really in my opinion, I think it should be managed by someone who is unbiased, and or someone who just doesn't have any skin in the game, if you will. Right, I think, again, that may be hard to find, but, again, as long as your server has a Kingdom or a server Discord set up, and, you have something like a council chat established for leaders of the alliances, you have an officer chat set up for anyone who's an R5 in an active alliance in your server, I think these are good things to do. Every server or every Kingdom, in my opinion, should have this set up from day one. And then the next thing I would say is after you get it set up, try and put together a team. And then message players. Right? Message anyone and everyone you can, whether it's people on the Lord Power list, on the Troop Power list, if you're just going around district by district and messaging players on the map, right? Have a copy-paste message ready and send that out. and then try and do that to as many people as you can. And then once you get access to server mail, kind of like how we've done in S36, is right then you start sending out like simple server mails of join the S27 Discord, and then you just provide the Discord link. And then I think it's also good to add in a player name that people can add. So if they want to add or message or reach out to someone that could send them direct invites, it gives you an option, because again, some people might find difficulty with accepting the invite link for whatever reason. You just give them a second option to still join. I think that is extremely important, because it's going to help you organize a lot of information that you're not able to do when you are only relying on in-game abilities. So again, keep in mind, you can't copy text in-game. That's something I'd love to see them eventually add. It would be really cool. You cannot upload. I don't even think you can send screenshots in-game either. At least I've never seen one. So again, little things like that, I think would be, again, small little nice kind of quality of life additions. But again, really important to set up a Kingdom Discord, I would say, earlier than later, and obviously, day one ideally. When it comes to after that, I think it's important to have someone do some form of diplomacy early on, meaning, have someone who really cares about the health of the server. And you can either assign, I'd say, 1 to 3 people. You can do one person who just is going to keep track and message leaders from all the top alliances, or you can do one person per faction for Red, Bleeding, and Grew. Those are probably the 2 ways I'd recommend doing it. And then you message all the leads. Like, let's say you're in a server where it's just every alliance for themselves, right? No one came in with a group or anything. Then you want to find someone that is willing to reach out to leads and ask them. You introduce yourself. You say, just want to come around and see what you're interested in doing in the server. Do you have any goals in mind? Right, you can share some of your thoughts if you'd like, and then just try and get information. Right, figure out how the server's developing, what are the alliance's goals, what are their intentions, and try to start off with a conversation. Right, sometimes it's not good just to demand something or ask for something right off the gate. Just getting information, introducing yourself is a really good way to go about it. And then I would say from there, once you start figuring out the landscape of how many alliances are kind of for the server, against the server, then what you can do is, then what you can do from there is you can start getting an idea on potential allies, and then maybe potential enemies. Right, the information game is, as we've always talked about, is vitally important. And then, once you figure that out, and you kind of have your, I'd say, imaginary lines drawn, to an extent, then what you can do is you can start putting together, some initiatives as far as if you're trying to band together against an alliance, against multiple alliances, maybe you just have a few troublemaker players in the server, you could start actioning those things. Whether you're setting up something like a rapid response team, or just a team of people that are, looking for, I'd say again, anything in any kind of capacity where you are wanting to just try and keep as many players as you can, right? That, at the end of the day, is always kind of the end goal, which is how are you going to be able to keep as many players in your server that you want. And a big part of that is because nobody wants to play in a server with 10.5 players. That's the big takeaway I always try and explain to players, is that if you don't take a proactive approach in your server, you are going to be left playing with just you, yourself, and I. In more of the drastic terms. And I mean, as we've heard from some players before, right, it's easy to lose activity. What's difficult is to keep activity and to retain players. And that's why I think it's important that there is some form of management that's set up, because for the most part, players are just going to come in to a server and they are, just going to play the game for what it is, right? They'll effortlessly go along with the timeline. They'll go off of chronicles. They'll attack a city. They might attack someone else's city. They might go and attack players. I mean, there's no way of knowing what individual players or even whole alliances are going to do themselves, or even ask their players to do. And all of these things factor into your overall playing experience as a player. So, again, just something to keep in mind when you're going out and looking for how you want to manage a server and the effort that you're going to put into doing it, because it does take some time. Right? It takes time to message leads. It takes time to message players. It takes time to get a Discord set up. It takes time to bring people together to the table to see if you can all come to if you can find any level of common ground in areas or in policies that you want to put in place. Because keep in mind, if you don't do any of this, then the one thing that can happen, and that you definitely know is going to happen, is your server could be lawless. Anything can happen if there's inaction. And that can come into the form of, again, kind of free-for-all PvPs, kill event being taken advantage of, and people just getting attacked left and right. And that's really the worst thing, is when you have server-wide PvP because you don't have any policies or instructions put in place. And that's where you end up losing a lot of players. I mean, this happens in probably any and every kingdom builder. But I would say a little more so in IK, just because there's no sectioned off portions of the map, right? The entire map is open from day one, so you can go anywhere that you want, move your city anywhere that you want on the map, and that's why I think it entices a little bit more of the PvP portion for why and how players are able to access others, again, from the start. I would say after you kind of get past the Discord portion, after you get past messaging alliance leads, right, have templated messages set up that you can post in world chat, you can post in kingdom chat prior to you getting access to server mail. And again, for those that might not be familiar with server mail, it's just the ability to message every single player on the server. It is really, in my opinion, I think one of the single-handedly best features that they've probably have put in Kingdom Builders, but more specifically in IK. I do think the current server mail system has to be expanded a little bit for how it's presented and how you can format things, maybe do some light HTML coding. But I do think, again, anything is better than nothing, always, or at least in most cases, I should say. So again, right, then once you get access to server mail, right, then start thinking, because at the moment I think you're limited to about 300 characters that you can type. So you're probably going to have to send quite a few in some areas. But keep in mind that through server mail, you are going to have opportunities to bring more players into your Discord. I mean, even now, we've probably had 20 or 25 players just in the past, 48 hours that have joined our S36 Discord just from us sending server mails out, letting people know that we have a Discord, it's organized, they can participate and engage in conversation, they can get other helpful information. And then consider, utilizing your server mails in really good ways, where you're providing things like best practices, tips to players. These are all good things that you can do. But most importantly, right, start early when it comes to working towards managing your server, because the earlier you start, the more proactive you are, the better gaming experience you may have in the long run. And that's not just for you as a management person, but for the players that are there. Right? Keep in mind, when you're really looking at server health, what really determines, I think for a big part in how many players are going to stay and be retained in your server is how well you do at managing. Not only expectations, but managing players and alliances that are in the server in a lot of ways. which is why I always talk about how it definitely takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. So, anyways, those are like I said, I'm not going to dive too deep into it because I could probably talk about 10 to 20 more equally as important points. But let me stop it here before we get into the last topic. Does anyone have a question? As I needed to stretch and yawn at the same time. Does anyone have a question on anything I've just talked about when it comes to managing a server? Again, if you're a lead, if you are an officer, if you're in a server and maybe you just want some advice or kind of ask on different ways to go about it, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. I will call on people there, and I'll also look at the voice channel system. You can infiltrate. Jeez. Let me see. There's 2 hand raises. Who do I have here? I have... what is that? Thank you very much, our bad kid. I'm just assuming that's what the acronym stands for. I will invite.
So whenever you're talking about servers, like whenever you want to like, however, managing your servers, like you just like want us to like update a server, like if it's better, you kind of want us to like update a server to make it better, the server better.
Sorry. So you're asking as far as up. I think if you're just asking generally, then part of it, and I guess depending on when you came in, if maybe you just didn't hear this part in the beginning, the psychology of how servers trend in the beginning of when they start out is that they're all pretty much, think of it like watching the Hunger Games, and it's just a free for all. That's really what servers trend in the direction of, and that's in a few ways. One, it's because you're always going to have some players that are going to want to play and be a part of higher ranked alliances, so there's always going to be the possibility of small to large amounts of movement as far as them wanting to join higher ranked alliances. In addition to alliances with, anytime you have a leaderboard system in place, everybody wants to climb the leaderboard. That's pretty standard for most alliances. And so they might have more aggressive recruiting. Maybe they'll recruit from other top alliances to try and form mega alliances that are just full of spenders. Anything can happen there. But the baseline or the common denominators in new servers is that players want to grow their accounts. You're going to have players that are going to swap and trade alliances to try and join higher ones. Alliances are always going to try and want to become more powerful. They want to work their way up the alliance leaderboards. And then you also are always going to have players and or alliances in your server that are going to want to just do nothing but PvP and watch the world burn. It just depends on how many of those you're going to have. So with those 3 big factors that in any kingdom builder, every server or kingdom is always going to see, that's why we talk about how it's really important to implement things that are going to reduce and minimize the amount of players that will leave a server because of those things.
Okay.
Did you have another question though, back in?
That's it.
All right, awesome. No, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it. Let's see, Blue Redson. Let's go ahead and call on you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
First time I'm using this. Okay. One of the problems I have is it seems like so many of these games expect players to have Discord, which I'm not knocking Discord, but sometimes I wonder when the games are designed that the designers tend to forget that not everyone's going to have Discord, and games should, in my opinion, rely so heavily on Discord for effective play. Anyway, I just wanted to give that feedback myself.
Okay. Yeah. No. Thanks so much for asking, or at least providing that piece there, Redson. I think. I think you have a good point. I mean, at least from my time playing these kinds of specific games, I think Discord has always been right. It's either Discord or it's WeChat or it's Line or it's a Facebook group to an extent. I think Discord, in my opinion, probably just has the most capabilities that can really be fully utilized in a lot of ways, especially like the people that are just tuning into this stage, voice channel, live podcast, or radio show, if you will. I think because of that, it also somewhat does go hand in hand. I think that for servers that are, let me give you this example. Let's say we had two servers, and let's say both servers had 1,000 players each, but one server relied solely on in-game capabilities, and then you had another server who used in-game capabilities as well, but they had a Discord server available to them, and let's say, just for lack of unrealistic expectations, let's say they had a 10% conversion rate for players that, from of those 1,000 active players that were in that server, about 100 of them joined the Discord server. I would say that that just because they have that extra outlet, oh dear Lord, excuse me, they are now going to be more capable when it comes to something like an alliance versus alliance, a server versus server, when it comes to organizing things in real time, whether it's sieging cities, doing counter sieges, organizing small little hit squads, whatever it may be, right? Because they now have this more streamlined way to communicate that is not just limited to in-game, right? I would say that a server is probably going to have a little bit more advantages in some of those areas because they are utilizing Discord. And again, it's not to take away from, I think, the main point that you have, which is that, yes, in short, a lot of these games, I think, do expect, well, I shouldn't say expect, but they give you the opportunity to interact on different social platforms. And so I think Discord is just kind of the natural one that most people go to. I also think that you just have a lot of games that always promote that, right? It's usually the game's official Facebook, it's the official website, it's the official Twitter, it's the official Discord, and whatever else, right? The Instagram, whatever else they add in there. And a lot of times they'll either have a screen in game that advertises those platforms, or they might send a mail out. Like Infinity Kingdom does that. They'll send mails out maybe once every 2 weeks, once a week, every week or two, to every player that plays the game, and they'll promote their social platforms. I think it's great. I definitely think it's a good thing. But yes, at the same time, I could understand how that might be challenging, because you might be in a server where they do a lot more of their kingdom management and leadership discussions or officer discussions on Discord rather than doing it in-game, or even utilizing both. I think part of that is just the current limitations, because one, you're not able to set up group chats with players that are outside of your alliance. Now, that is something we've asked for. I think if they add in some more of those quality of life tools, where you can add, like you can have a friends list, and you can add a player to a group chat, you could essentially, like let's say you're a leader in game, you can send a friend request out to all the other active leaders in your server, and then you can make a group chat where you guys talk in game. And you can also take advantage of the translation feature, right? Especially for people that speak other languages. I think that would be a great addition. That's not something I can really do. Well, I mean, you can if you use like a translator bot. There are ways to do it on Discord, but again, to your point, I think that that would be something, if they added a few more tools in game, then more players could take advantage of, or at least utilize. And I am hoping that they do, right? Especially just given how young the game is. I think there's just a lot of room for improvement and growth. Let me see here in the voice channel chat if anyone had a question. Sorry, something related to server management. Let me scroll up here. Diablo, totally going to answer that question that you asked as well. Sorry, that next one I should say that you asked about the flagging. Sorry, Bad Wolf said, I missed it. When does server-wide mail open? So it opens at the end of COR, which is Contention of Relics. You hit that at, oh god, I want to say that's the first 3 weeks of the server. Let me double check. And look at my timeline here, just so we can confirm. So it opens, let's see here, Chronicles, let's take a look. Whenever I can click on my Chronicles. So COR round 1 starts, let me see, 16, ours started 5/16. Yeah, so ours started about 23, 24 days after the server opened. And then you have to wait 4 days because you have a day of prep and then 3-day participation stage. So you're looking at about, I'd say 27, 28 days, plus or minus 1. As far as when COR will end, if you've crowned a king, and then you'll have access to server mail. So compared to other games I've played, it's a lot faster that you get access to server mail here than I've had access to in other games, which is awesome. I think even with migration, right, you can migrate to servers that are 90 days old compared to other games I've played where, you know, you have to wait, whatever it is, 150, 160 days, right? It's a lot longer. Yeah. Yeah, Hadama. There you go. Sorry, Delker asked, any thoughts about using the official server to allow Alliance's servers to have group chats as opposed to expecting them to create their own Discord server? So, what I would say on that, Delker, is I think that's a lot. Mainly because if you look at the current capabilities of Discord servers, I mean, sure, you could have, I don't even know if there's a limit on how many channels. I've never actually looked. But if you think about all the alliances, or even just all the servers that are in the game, you would have to create separate sections or categories and then separate channels for each of those, or even voice channels for each of those servers. That's just a lot to do on an official Discord. It's a lot more, I think, reasonable for players that are in those servers, because most likely, just off of, I would say, percentage chance, you're going to have someone or a few people that most likely have some Discord experience or server creating experience that are in your server that you're playing in game. So I think, again, it's really just a matter of, you know, connecting with someone, or even if you just want to learn yourself. I mean, there's a lot of really easy kind of do-it-yourself videos on YouTube that you can find on how to do it. You could probably teach yourself how to set up a pro server in, you know, 30 minutes. 30 to 60 minutes for the most part. So, daunting. It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about right now is, at least from my experience, I've never seen I've never seen, at least out of the Kingdom Builders I've played, I've never seen their official Discord, you know, put on shows like we are now, right? Like I am now for IK. And really explaining a lot of these things in an educational way, because there's a lot that really goes into it. Like when you see, as a player, when you come into a server, I mean, it could be one of those things where something's being done a certain way, and you don't even know why it's being done that way. And it could be, and it most likely is because it's probably happening at a higher level of conversation, and that could have been happening on the Discord, and then it's just translated over to in-game. Right, but it kind of goes into the same thing. It's like out of sight, out of mind. If you don't know where it's coming from, how it got to that point, because the information wasn't explained to you, that can also be a reason for why you would lose activity. Right, for why players might leave, or for why they might feel ill-informed or uninformed. And again, those are just all things to consider and think about. So I think someone else had a question in the voice channel chat. And then again, if anyone has a question on voice, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. I'm happy to call on you. We're always happy to hear some more sultry voices. This is going to be the last question I answer too as well. Well, maybe one more. But let me start by answering Kawa's question. And then we'll get to the last big topic, which is going to be server-wide events. So we'll talk about things like City Siege, Supreme Alliance, Contention Lords, and King of the Hill, and how those things really need to be managed appropriately. Delker said, you set high expectations, and we'll start to ask for the stars. There you go. Excuse me. Well, there we go. Yeah, so Yummy looked it up. He said max Discord channels is 500. Yeah, I just think it would be hard. It would be a really big challenge and task. Kawa, let me see. Kawa asks, I would like to see some more spicy events happening soon, like the Illusion Battlefield. It seems interesting and looks like a lot of fun, but our server will get access to it in 16 days, so I'm kind of bored right now. Would like to see some more content or stuff to do in the meantime. Except attacking people, which is making me bored. I'm going to stay tuned, but do you know something about it? Well, I mean, I would say, I would say a lot of it is just putting yourself in the right state of mind. I think, like, as an example, if you get bored just from playing, or I shouldn't even say just from, but if you get bored from playing the game from day one, and you feel that there's more events that need to be added to pique your interest, what I would say, at least in my opinion, for what I get out of playing these games, is that I just enjoy the idea of being able to level my account. When I log in every day, I'm happy to do my dailies. I'm happy to go in and do my Mysterium. I'm happy to keep working on attacking gnomes, on doing bosses, on constantly gathering, knowing that every little bit of micro task that I do is leading up to me being able to progress my account with some of those initial end goals in mind of hitting level 40, Castle 40, getting T5 troops, maxing out my academy, maxing out my Lord talents from Lord EXP levels, maxing out the skills of my marches, leveling them up, getting access to higher equipments from Well of Time, or as far as for boost levels to increase. I mean, those are some of what I believe should be more of like immediate goal focuses. Personally, I think there's a good amount of events currently that are in Infinity Kingdom that rotate, along with the seasonal events they add in. Right now, they're adding on more rotational events like King of the Hill. They're going to have the Roulette's Wheel, which who knows how long that's going to last for, and then you have Illusion Battlefield. So there are a lot of things that are in the game event-wise, but keep in mind it also depends on, are you free to play or are you spending? Because for people that are spending, you're going to be able to progress in the game faster than players that are free to play. So you also have to factor in that perspective, when people are coming from, like, the game needs more. Keep in mind the game isn't even 4 months old yet, and they do have, well, at least what I feel personally, is a good amount of events, though, again, they are continuously adding. I mean, I think this is the fourth or fifth, maybe not, I shouldn't say the fourth or fifth, like, newish event that they've put out, and I think this is the third new rotating event that they've added in since the game was officially released. So I think sometimes what I like to try and look at is, like, the realistic expectation versus unrealistic. And that doesn't mean that they don't need to add more, right? I think adding more is a great thing. I think in moderation and with somewhat of a timeline to where they're not just giving you all the eggs in the basket at once, I think is also good. But like I said, I think to your point, Kawa, I think Illusion Battlefield is great. I think it's going to be happening every 2 weeks from what they said. And it's definitely going to be a fun event. But I think for the most part, right, a lot of the end game stuff we talk about is really looking at, like, server versus server. Right? That's what I think every player should really be progressing and building their account for. It should be for server versus server. Even though it hasn't been officially announced yet when it is coming out, they have officially announced that it's being worked on. Just like they announced that AVA is being worked on, right? And then they eventually came out with that. In my opinion, they came out with that way sooner than I thought they were going to come out with it on. Right? They announced it, and in a month and a half or so, right? We're starting to see Illusion Battlefield. So, I think the timeline that we're probably expecting things, I think, like I said, I think IK has a good head on their shoulders. I think that they're doing a lot of things right as a developer, as far as when it comes just to player engagement, and then, adding in new content. So far, everything has been very consistent. And it does seem like they are listening to the community as well, which I think is great. And obviously, we'll have to see, like usual, how long that lasts and if it stays consistent through the game's lifespan. I know some players have seen that where it starts out really good, and then it starts tailing off, and then it starts becoming more about the game, catering more towards the spenders or the pay-to-play, rather than your free-to-play base. And I think a good example of this that I'll briefly touch on is when they did the, I think it was the Spring Festival event. This event I thought was just amazing because they allowed for you as a free-to-play player to acquire all of the rewards in the event, but you had to grind. Like, you actually had to spend some action points from your items, but you could get every single reward in the event. And then they added on additional spender rewards. So, like, they had columns where you could spend green gems to unlock a column, and then you could also spend, I think, like $14.99 to get more and better upgrade and more and better rewards. I think that is a good way to outline out future events, right? Is allow for there to be a good amount of rewards that you can get from free to play. Allow for them to all be attainable, right? Through, and of course free to play has to use some resources, right? They're not just going to get it as a walk in the park. They have to grind and invest a bit, but make it so they can get those without having to use green gem currency, and then add on additional reward tiers where you would use green gem currency, and then maybe if you want to spend money, maybe they add on like a $5 tier, a $10 tier, a $15, $20, however they do it. Like I said, I really like the way they did the Spring Festival event because I thought it was just an ideal format going forward compared to the hunting festival event, or the hunting event they did, which was I think the second to last event, or if not the last event, last seasonal event they did. That one I thought almost felt like it went in the complete opposite direction, because as a free-to-play player, I was only able to unlock about 35% of the event's rewards. So really only about a third. But like I said, I think part of it is them trial and error. It's testing, and as long as there's not this consistent trend of free-to-play, just never being able to do anything, which that hasn't been shown at all as of yet, right? I think is again still good learning opportunities from the community. Sorry, let me see if anyone had their hand raised. Oh, someone did. iSilver. Let's see. Okay, that was an immediate take back on the hand raise. I think they left too as well after I said their name. It's okay. All right, let's get to. Okay, so let's briefly talk about the server-wide events, and then I'm just going to open the floor up for a little bit longer for anyone that has any additional questions. So let me talk about City Siege, Supreme Alliance, and Contention of Lords, Kill Event, and King of the Hill. So the City Siege event is. Let me change this to. Let me update this. Supreme Alliance, Contention of Lords, and King of the Hill events. Okay, really shocking. Okay, cool. We'll update that. So. Let me start off with City Siege. So City Siege lasts 2 weeks. Supreme Alliance, I think, lasts 3 weeks. And the City Siege event is essentially where your alliance has to capture cities, and each city allots you a certain amount of faction points. Depending on how many faction points you accumulate prior to the end of the event, you will get placed into certain reward tiers. This falls a little bit under kind of the management portion, so I'm just going to briefly touch on this, but I do think it's important that players look at how to manage this event. This will be, prior to Contention of Lords in the Kill event, another milestone event in your server, where if let's say you only have a few alliances that get rewards from this event, that most likely means that they're probably hoarding cities, or they've just captured a lot of the cities on the map, which means less alliances are going to have cities, in addition to only a small group of alliances are going to have rewards from that event. This can also be a turnoff to other alliances and players in your server, which can also lead to activity loss. So it's good to think about how you're going to manage it. Now, let me talk about Supreme Alliance. Supreme Alliance is a little bit similar of the same. Supreme Alliance is going off of any player that has faction power. So the example there is you could arguably have one player or one alliance each have a city, and everyone would get paid out with rewards. You could do it where you have certain alliances that you're trying to have hit certain tiers, or do somewhat of like a fixed placement system for where they go out. Now that's going to be a little more difficult, especially early on, if there's, again, no organization or whatnot. It'll probably, with City Siege and with Supreme Alliance, those could turn into free-for-alls themselves. I'm sure some of you who've played on other servers, you probably have experienced that, where some of the top alliances are just going around and trying to cap the highest level cities they can, so they can get that 300 faction power reward tier, and then also for when Supreme Alliance comes around, they can be in the #1 position for faction points as well. Again, either of those can still be damaging to your server, because you could still lose out on player or even alliance activity if they do not feel welcomed, or if they do not feel like they're going to be able to get anything out of your server. Or the server they're in, I should say. And then you get to Contention of Lords, or the kill event. This is the big one we always talk about, because this is basically going to be your main activity loss event that every server is going to experience. And really, the best way to look at it is how many people you're going to be able to retain activity-wise. So, like we've said, my recommendation is always do not do a server-wide PvP event if you are able to factor into it. It might be good in the short term, or I shouldn't even say good. It might be appealing in the short term to players that, on average, usually spend, but the long-term effects that it's going to have usually are not seen until probably about a week or two after the event ends. And that's arguably for every round. So it's important to try and have a system in place. No matter what that system is, again, I would say at bare minimum, try and have at least one district or one area be a safe zone when you're doing Contention of Lords, your kill event. My recommendation would be to have it be like RSS. If you just at minimum, you can have it be like the RSS Zone 1, which is typically the perimeter cities on the edge of the map. You can have those cities and that zone be a safe haven for players who do not want to participate in the server-wide event. That would be my recommendation. Again, that's at bare minimum. If you do more than that, it's really up to your group. Now let's get into King of the Hill. So King of the Hill is going to be more or less pretty much a similar upgraded version of Contention Lord's Kill event. So King of the Hill, it's a 5-stage event, and I want to say it factors in, gathering, it factors in, I think, attacking barbs, doing build, I think it's doing overall power increase, and, oh god, I can't even remember the last one now. If it's research or building or attacking bosses. Gosh, it's one of them. I'm having such a mind blank right now. But then you get to stage 5. Stage 5 is just the kill event. It's just another PvP event. This one lasts 2 days, and I would just say the same thing, right? Be mindful. The thing about this event, though, and why it is more impactful than Contention of Lords, is because they're starting to add in immortals that are gated, meaning you can only get them if you place high in the King of the Hill event, which is similar to an MGE for those of you who are familiar with that. So that's why I say you're most likely going to have more participation in the King of the Hill event than you will in Contention of Lords, because the rewards and the prizes are better. This means that it is going to be even more necessary and more important to do your best to manage stage 5 in King of the Hill, because it can get out of hand real quick. right? You can have players just going left and right, attacking as many people as they can because they're vying for the top spot. This type of event is a spender event. It's not a free-to-play event. And what that means is that it's almost like, think of it like a bidding war, right? But you have players that just don't want to stop bidding, right? They're constantly outbidding each other. And that's kind of what the stage 5 portion of King of the Hill is. It's you have spenders that are trying to get that number 1 spot, so they're just going to keep attacking players as much as they can to get more PvP points. And then because this player passed them on the ranking, now this player is going to do more PvP, the next player is going to do more PvP, and they're just going to keep rotating, trying to place in the top spot. And that's kind of what this event incentivizes for players that are really looking at trying to place well, and they just don't really care about how they get there. And those are things that can negatively or inversely affect your server and the players that are in it. So again, just some food for thought and things to think about. That basically finishes and kind of covers our last point of the early game. Does anyone have a question? And at this point, I'm just going to open the floor up fully. So if anyone has a question on anything, it can be anything we've talked about or anything else. And again, anyone can ask anything if you want to raise a hand, if you want to ask in the voice channel chat. Let me update this to our live Q&A now. Let me see, live. Okay, sorry, let me see if anyone has typed something in here. Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm definitely going to go back and answer those questions that Diablo asked about and some of the other ones. I have those written down, and I'll probably just scroll back up. I just want to see if anyone has... I just want to see if anyone has a question on anything I just talked about on the server-wide events. If not, then I will scroll back up and answer any of those kind of post-session questions. Okay, let me scroll back up then, and let's answer a few of these. Probably be easier than me. Okay, so let me answer this first one. So this first one that Diablo asked says, do you think it's viable to keep servers balanced and limit gameplay so much in a game where the SVS faction is still so far away? I imagine you just meant an SVS feature. From my past experiences, most servers that are opened before the SVS update die out due to people getting bored or either going the other way and murdering the entire server. Yeah. Naturally, PvP is a large part of the game, and the limitations put by server leaders might be overwhelming for the majority of whales. So, what I would say is that definitely can happen, and it may actually happen more often than not. From my experience, which seems like you have a little bit as well in other kingdom builders, these are pretty similar, I would say pretty familiar areas that we're probably used to seeing in a lot of different servers. Now, keep in mind, that's one of the reasons, and this would probably be a history lesson for some, but that's actually one of the reasons why jump groups, which they're now known as, really started out. Right, jump groups were really started to combat and to counteract server volatility in any form, from combating potential whales to combating rogue alliances or players, right? That's kind of the whole purpose behind them. It's gathering up a big enough group where you increase the chances of having spenders in your group and you being a deterrent when you land in a new server, so you can combat any of those rogue players, alliances, or whales more effectively and efficiently, because you have the majority group, if you will, like the majority biggest group in a server. So with that in mind, I think that is, the way, because like for example, if the majority of players in a server that are somewhat of the controlling group, and everyone in your group is on the same page, it can really kind of just become a domino effect where that bleeds into the other players as well, or at least as many as you can. A big part of that is also going to have to come from educating the player base, right? That's where server mails come in, world chat promo messages come in, messaging leaders ahead of time to give them a good understanding of what you're trying to build, bringing them into your Discord so you can send longer messages than just the 500 private chat message character limit that the game allows at the moment. Right, there's a lot of ways to do that. But I think the main point that you bring up, Diablo, which again I couldn't really I couldn't agree more with, because I just think it's very accurate given the current landscape of new players coming into Kingdom Builders, is that again, given that SVS, I mean, well, and this is like a two-part answer. One, keep in mind, even though SVS hasn't been officially announced as an ETA, the mode has been announced. The challenge is that not everyone goes onto the official Discord, and probably even less maybe go onto the official Facebook, or about the same. And not everyone even knows that. The only way you would know that SVS is really even being developed is if you saw that announcement when it was posted, or if you're reading into it from the new server announcements, because they do talk about like a server versus server thing is being developed in a brief line in those. But if you are not in any of those, then yeah, you'd have no idea, right? You wouldn't know until they make the next announcement. And then at that time, you might not even know what it is, right? Unless they take time to explain. So that's why even in the beginning of the show, I talk a lot about how when you play these kinds of games, a big portion of time that you may take out of your day, like I do, is just educating. It's informing players of things, and it really is an information. A big part of it is like an information game, right? It's spreading and disseminating that those pieces of information out to as many players as humanly possible, as fast as humanly possible, in a lot of different ways. To hopefully give them some insight into something like SVS and kind of what the focus is. But you're right. You may always run into a situation where you have some players that don't know what SVS is. It's not relevant because in their minds it's not here. So why are we going to spend time? Why are we going to spend time investing into a server for something that might not come out for 6 months when we can just have PvP and play it all out right now, right? And yeah, that is going to be a mindset that some players have. But then you're going to have other mindsets from other players and leads that understand the benefit of investing early into a server, especially if you could have good player retention and the leaders of those alliances understand the value. I mean, in games like this, you have a lot of times you have opportunities to build what I would refer to as like a super server. And I could give some examples of ones that were built in other games, but typically servers that are able to really unify early and start working on their SVS prep now are going to be in so much better of a position. Same thing when people thought, like, this is the thing, let me give an example. When I first started playing IK, I played in server 4 about a week after server 4 came out, right? So about halfway through beta. And I guess I should say about 2/3 of the way through beta, because I think server 1 came out really early. But the thing about it is, when I came in, I spent probably the first couple of weeks just learning the game and just clicking on everything, reading everything, learning as much as I could. Then I organized a very small group of players for one alliance's worth in server 6. I immediately did pretty much everything I've talked about so far, and then more. We messaged all the leads day one. We got them set up into a kind of council Discord server. We got officers involved. We shared ideas and thoughts about how to go about managing the server and the kingdom. We asked for feedback. The challenge is that players were just too different. it was just some people had no idea how to go about managing servers and kingdoms and kingdom builders because they've never done it before. So that's the first roadblock that a lot of players are going to run into. And then the second one is that there's a language barrier. That's probably going to be the second roadblock that you'll run into. Having to take a lot of extra time to reword things, whether it's through Google Translate or even if you have a friend or someone a part of your group that speaks another language, right? There's a little bit of work you have to do there. And then you're going to have the third roadblock, which is going to be that, let's say you have players that understand, but they just don't want to run the kingdom or the server the same way you do, right? They have different ideas on how to do it. That's going to be your third roadblock. So, you have three big hurdles that you have to really overcome. This is why I put so much stock and really belief in how running a jumper project is extremely important. I feel like it's almost necessary to do it, but you have to have the right, in my opinion, I feel like you have to have the right people in place that have good intentions and they are looking to manage the project in a way in which it's going to benefit all of the players on a server. Because for me, when I run projects, that's exactly the mindset that I approach it with, is how, don't get me wrong, even though I have leads that I've interviewed, they've gone through application processes, right? The extent that I set a project up, at least in my opinion, is extremely professional. And I really haven't seen projects managed or organized to any level for the way that I've done it before for projects that I've managed. But it doesn't mean that other projects cannot be managed well. It just means that you have to just kind of find the right people. You got to put the right people in place. You got to have a good team. And so I think when you go into a server with a group, it lends you a lot more security. And it also allows for you to have kind of that deterrent setup, but it also factors into bleeding into the masses when it comes to setting up for something like an SVS. A lot of the leads I have right now that we work together on in S36, all of these people filled out like a 15-question application. I interviewed these people at least once, if not twice, for 30 to 45 minutes each. And that was on a voice call. And we ran through everything. I basically talked to them. I said, these are going to be the short-term and some of the long-term goals. Is this something that you align with? Do you feel like this is the type of a server kingdom that you want to be a part of? Do you have any questions? And everyone that we put in place so far has still felt that exact same way, right? They haven't like flip-flopped or lied and changed and went rogue or anything, which is surprising because even that can happen, right? You can run the most organized and the most professional jumper group or project ever, but it doesn't mean that you are devoid of, players deciding or choosing to do whatever they want, right? I mean, I've had that happen in a couple projects where, you hope people come in with the right intentions and they really truly believe in a project or the way a server's being built. And then halfway through, people start showing their true colors. And they'll leave or take their alliance with them or bring players over, or they start, it's like that slow molasses bleed, like that slow molasses movement where it starts just slowly seeping in, where they'll drop you little like, Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs here and there, based on things they say or actions they take, where it starts leaning in the direction of them not really fully believing or being invested into the project. And even that can happen. So, don't get me wrong, there are so many things that can happen whether you're going in with an organized group or not, but I always believe there's less margin of error and less unforced errors that you're going to take when you have an organized group going into a server than if you don't. And I think at the end of the day, when it comes to server balance and looking at SVS, right, it's always an information game. You have to take time to inform players and educate if you really want to explain why it is a benefit. Why would a player opt to not PvP versus PvP? Right. So even for me, in my capacity as a project manager, so to speak, for S36, honestly, about half of my day, at least for time that I'm in game or on, is just messaging people. It's repeating information over and over again. having the same conversations over and over, and just trying to spread the word as much as I can, at least in some of the things that I do. But in that area, yeah, it really is. It's a consistent enjoyment, at least for me. As far as the part you mentioned about keeping servers balanced and limiting gameplay in some areas, I think the same thing applies. I think players are smarter than we probably give most credit for, and with that, I think if players see a huge imbalance, as an example, on the leaderboards, that can be a turnoff to them. That can be a reason why players would leave. So I'm definitely a big believer in trying to keep alliances as balanced as possible as far as how the power looks. As far as limiting gameplay, I think there's a lot more pros than cons when it comes to doing that. But at the end of the day, that information still has to be explained to players. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, man, it's. Yeah, yeah. I mean, whales are going to do what they want to do. I think that's always something that's going to happen. You're never really going to be able to stop that. I think the best thing we can always try and do is just explain. Right? We take time to explain to players. Maybe take a little extra time to explain to people that spend, what the benefits are. So, but yeah. Let me get to the next question here. You're welcome. Yeah, I know that was kind of long. Let me see here. What was the next question that was asked? Man, I have to scroll down a lot for this one. Oh, here we go. Okay, so someone asked... Okay, so Diablo said... Oh, this is the thing you mentioned about the migration ticket. Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, the way that the current migration system works is that you would actually have to spend some money to leave. I think the New World bundles, I think, come out 2 or 3 weeks in when they start spawning, and you're able to purchase those, because you have to be Alliance level 9 in order to buy a space teleport as a free-to-play. But Alliance level 9 could take you 7 to 9 months to hit before your alliance gets there. And that means that your alliance has to be consistently active throughout that entire time. And you probably need to have maybe some spenders so they're doing extra donations. But at least if it's just default donations, then yeah, I would say somewhere around there. So yeah, like I said, I think the free migration token actually is... I'll be honest, I actually think that's like just a fantastic idea. I mean, now that I really think about it, a little bit more, yeah. I mean, yeah, because I think if they were to do that, in my opinion. I think they would have to limit. I think they would need to add... So here's the thing. If they did that, then I think what they need to do is they would need to lower the migration cap option to 500k. Maybe 500 and 750. Like, add a few more levels to where you, as king, can control the migration setting for what the cap is at. I think if they added it to... I think if they made it 500k... If they added a 500k and or added a 750k as well, I think that would make it more viable, because the challenge is that if you give everyone a migration item and you don't have an opportunity and you don't give your server tools to fight against a potential mass migration, then you could have some challenge. I love the idea, now that I think about it more, of having a one-time free migration item. I do like that. As far as to take your account, like wherever you want, or better, you can make it to where you have a free migration item that is worth a certain amount of space teleports, right? Like let's say you have a free migration item, but it's only up until 500k power, right? Something like that. I think would actually be a really good way to do it. If it was maybe somewhat limiting, or if you just said, I guess it depends. I mean, like I said, I like the idea. I guess I worry. Well, I guess now that I think about it, geez, now that I think about it a little bit more. I mean, you would have to worry about the big whales because if you gave, well, it really wouldn't matter about the big whales because you would still have the migration cap set at 1 mil, no matter what. But it still means that players could come into the server that are like 990k and still. So yeah, I would say I still love the idea. I would just say add another setting where you can limit players coming in at 500k minimum and then 750k if they want to add an extra one on. I think that would solve it. Yeah, but no, yeah, hands down, love the idea. Hands down, love the idea. So, yeah, because I think the good thing is that it gives new players a way out. Where, like, if I'm really thinking about it, as a new player, you're coming in, and if you have the opportunity to leave your server to go to a more healthy server, right? And you have like one, it's like the same thing as like a faction token. Like they give you one free faction change token, you get one free server migration token. No, I absolutely love that. I actually think that would help retain the player base a lot more because they wouldn't feel like they're locked in and they have to buy space teleports, and they probably would be more likely to if they ever want to migrate again. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I love the idea. But on the other side, from a business standpoint, it also takes away from players spending money to accumulate space teleports. But it doesn't mean that they won't, because they're going to have to do it no matter what after they would use their one free change token, right? So it's almost like we help you out, we're going to give you something, but you're still going to have to spend or gather them if you ever want to go to another. Uh-oh. I think I'm getting attacked on one of my accounts. He's like the 20 thing. Yeah, 20,000 tokens is a lot. Oh my god, attacker victory. What is this guy's thing at? Oh, my victory. Get wrecked. Sorry, let me go through some of these other ones here. Oh well. Sweet. Awesome. Sorry, I'm still reading some more questions. Sorry, I was just countering someone that was trying to attack me in game. Let's see here. Fantastic. All right, let me take a look. Does anyone have any questions? Ooh, someone's got a hand raised. Sorry. Let me see. Majesty, go ahead. Sorry, I just saw that right now. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, I'm new here, so can you...
Sure. No, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you tell me what's going on right now? I'm really new here.
Oh, yeah, sure. So if you're just joining in and checking it out, we're just talking about Infinity Kingdom, which is a mobile game and MMO RTS strategy kingdom builder. And so, yeah, that's what we're talking about. So if you want to check out the game at all, you're more than welcome to check it out on the App Store or, I guess, Play Store, depending on your device.
I joined the server because I am with Infinity Kingdom, so
Oh, you have the game downloaded.
yes.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So, yeah. This meeting is us really just kind of talking about, development as far as in servers. Kind of just talking about weekly, as far as kind of weekly progressions that we're talking about. Last week we basically was like our introduction video that we did. There's actually a VOD that's in the voice channel chat too as well. We'll do another one for this. But it's really just kind of talking about good tips, practices that we give new players, and talking a little bit about expectations and experiences that you'll have when you play in a new server, and just trying to give players, good information.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, no, you're more than welcome. Let's see here, Sexy Kirby. I'm always down for some.
Hello there.
What's up?
Okay, so this is an RTS game or whatever, right?
Yeah, to an extent.
Okay. I have no idea what that means. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Yeah. So, with the, let me send you back to the audience. So so RTS in short is just real-time strategy. It just means that it's not turn-based. That's usually the biggest example. It just means that all of your actions in game are all done on a real-time basis, and players that are in the server for their actions as well are all done on a real-time basis. So there's no delay, or it's my turn to make an action, then your turn to make an action. Everything is done in real time. And so in this game, I wish I could stream. I just know you can't do that on the stage channel. So essentially, it is again, and like I said, I mean, if you haven't seen the game before, I definitely recommend taking a look. You can type in Infinity Kingdom on Google, or what is Infinity Kingdom. I'm sure there's a couple review videos that are out there that kind of will show you a little bit about the game. In addition, check it out on the Play Store or the App Store for that matter, and then you can also get a little more information. But in short, it's an open world, massive multiplayer online strategy game that you play with other players. There's up to 30 to 50,000 players that are in a server, and everyone is kind of vying and trying to do some of the same stuff, and it's really just a matter of kind of building your kingdom up. There's objectives that are in the game. It's really awesome. I mean, when it comes to something that's a competitive multiplayer game, I really believe Kingdom Builders is kind of like that next level of grand strategy that you're really getting out of it. So it is awesome to me. I hope that somewhat explained as best I could. Let me see here what else we have. Sorry, there's a few more questions, and then let me see what our time is right now. We're at about, 2 hours and 47 minutes. Lovely. Totally going to have to get out of here soon. Let me see here on if there's a couple more questions we can ask. Answer, I should say. Then, let's see. I can't hit barbs. I think there was one more question I was missing out on. Okay, so yeah, Diablo asked, would you say the territory building system in other games with flags and center fortresses are more strategy-based compared to what we have in this game? The system allowed for a flexible way of dominating SVS battles by careful territory planning. So, yeah, I mean, I would say that definitely is a. I would say that's definitely a mechanic that I liked from that game. As far as if you're asking if I would like to potentially see something, something like that done in IK. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it would be kind of cool. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary, just because IK kind of already has its own way that it's going about. Now, if they end up introducing something, later into the game that might be something around that, then, of course, that would be, I think, different at that time. But probably I would say maybe welcomed, just because it adds another element. I mean, at the moment, you can really chalk up your alliance's overall uh, things to do as you you know gathering players around and going to attack a city, capture the city, and then you're just farming within that district because you have the 50% gathering speed bonus, right? That's kind of the bulk of it, right? There's not really a lot more to do as an alliance full of players on the map outside of capturing cities, recapturing, abandoning cities, and then, if you're going and fighting anyone or doing PvP stuff. But outside of that, if we're just talking about the PvE, then yeah, I mean, that kind of is the extent of it at the moment. So if they added something like that in, I think it could be pretty cool. I mean, I think they have the capabilities to do that, but I just don't know, if it's something the game absolutely needs right now. I think the game is definitely, I think the game is definitely good enough as, within its current capabilities. But we'll see if they added something like that in. I don't get me wrong. I do think it adds another element too as well when it comes to some of the SVS battles that you'll probably have or that could occur. So yeah, I think that's something else. So let me see if there was another question we had. Sorry, did anyone have a hand raised? Let me check. Nope. Okay. So let me just try and get through a few more of these, and then we'll probably end the show here in a few. Someone pinged me in Gen Chat. Oh, there's so many things in Gen Chat. Nice. Sorry, let me see here real quick. If there's something out of left field. Yeah. So I think I answered that from Diablo. Let me see if there's anything else here. Okay, sorry. Hardest asked, a bit off topic. I love how free-to-play, low-spender friendly the game is, but do you worry about the direction the game may be headed after Siegfried? I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's a valid question to ask. I think with, I mean, I don't think it's just Siegfried. I mean, I think it's Flavius. I think it's Flavius being added. I think it's also Dido and Cyrus being added, right, with just some additional kind of pay-to-win gated options that the that the game's kind of throwing at you now. So I think there's also that element to it. Yeah, I mean, we'll. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I guess we'll have to wait and see, kind of what happens. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you're just looking at the recent dealings, because again, you have to wait till you hit. Oh God, what is it? So you have to win the event, place well enough in the. Or sorry, let me backtrack. With the roulette's event, you can get Sieg sculpts or Sieg shards, and you could probably unlock if you want to use a bunch of green gem currency. Then for Dido and Cyrus, you have to place well in MGE, which again is a spender-based event. So, you're more likely that those players are going to have access to those immortals probably sooner rather than later. And then you have Flavius as well, which, you're going to have to wait for him to come up. So, yeah, I mean, at least with... Don't get me wrong, you can acquire, the 4 new immortals you can acquire as a free-to-play. It's just that in two of the events, or the event that two of the immortals are going to show up in, are just highly unlikely that you're going to place well or high enough as a free to play, right? So that's kind of the caveat there. With Flavius, right, he'll eventually come up in Thea's Roulette, and then I think once you unlock, so once you unlock in Thea's Roulette, then they'll show up in daily deals. I think that's how that works. No. I think that's the Cyrus Ditto one, where you have to unlock first, and then they'll show up in daily deals. With Flavius and Siegfried, right, it's Thea's Roulette, and then daily deals, and then market they'll be attainable in, but it's probably going to be green gems. So, I mean, again, you're going to have to wait to see, but at least two of the immortals are going to be accessible, which is Siegfried and Flavius, from the wheel, right, which is using your green gem currency. So it is something free to play can do. They just have to save. And then for the Ditto and the Cyrus event, that is probably just going to be a little more unattainable, or at least harder to obtain, I should say. So I don't think that the game. I mean, the game could be going in that direction. I mean, I think from when they started, they're probably making a lot more money now. They're coming out with consistent updates. I think everything is great. I think the thing to keep in mind is that even if they made these immortals not gated, and they just added packs to the bundles, you're accomplishing the same thing, right? Free to play is still not going to be able to level up all of these immortals at the same time. Like, let's have some realistic expectations here. Even if they opened up even if they came out with some event that you could at least bare minimum unlock as a free to play, but it was just hard to get the shards, you still have to consider that you have to work on 4 immortals for a march. And if you want to level up any other marches, you're still going to have to work on more immortals for your other marches. So part of me feels like in some games the way they limit free to play sometimes just seems overly aggressive, because it's still going to take an extremely long amount of time to do anything, for the most part, when you're looking at maxing out, or you just talk about maxing anything. So, like I said, I don't think the events are. I don't want to say that they're. Well, I guess let me change that up. What I will say about the events is, I'm happy that they're adding in new immortals. At the same time, I do think there needs to be more opportunities to at least unlock, at minimum, for free to play. If not, unlock after maybe 2 events worth, right? For maybe free rewards that they can get. And then when it comes to like shards or anything, if they cost green gems, or if it's in daily deals, whatever it may be, right? I think there are other ways that they can, essentially accomplish the same thing. Let me see. Diablo asked. Oh, hang on. I already talked to. All right, I did talk about that. Let me see. Oh, Kirby, that's cool. Didn't know you were a voice actor. That's awesome. I remember playing a Viking game with amazing voice lines. I think they just redid some of it too as well. But yeah, I hope that answers the question, Hardis. Let me see here. Sagakur, you asked. Sorry, you asked. I'll throw something out of left field. Tips for people who are not whales and thus not at the top of the server, certainly not king, on rallying their server to look towards SVS. Most of the content I've heard, I came in late, seems to rely on benevolent whales to set things up. Oh, Sagekur, thank you. That's okay. I'm so far in right now. You can blame me for anything. I'll gladly accept it, on my enunciation of words. So, to answer, yeah, this might be the last one I'll talk about before we end, guys. Is so you asked. So you said most of the content I heard, I came in late, seems to rely on benevolent whales to set things up. So, I honestly, I would say that's kind of quite the opposite. I do not know many whales that have the amount of time in their days to organize projects or manage servers. Usually it's the other way around. It's usually the free-to-play guy who's doing it, and at least in most cases. So what I would say there is, yeah, again, I know it was kind of more of a statement from your end, not necessarily a question. I would just say that a lot of it is probably going to be coming more from the free-to-play side. I mean, even big spending games I've played, I rarely came across someone who spent that invested a significant amount of time into the health and goodwill of the server from a management perspective. Most of the time it was them, just playing and, kind of being that extra piece on the board to help the server go in the direction that they would like to see it going as well. And that's only for the small percentage of whales, true whales, that cared about the way a server went. A lot of whales, in my experience, don't. They just, they want the short-term enjoyment. They want to be able to access higher tier stuff. So. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, right? I mean, and I talked about it earlier too as well. So when I post the VOD up, you'll probably have access to that. But in short, again, a lot of it just comes in from, players that have time putting the work in. And as far as how to go about doing that, I did touch on that in some previous topics. So I will be time stamping out the video too as well for any of the major topics that we did touch on. So if people want to go and re-listen to any of those sections, they will be able to. So let me see. All right, I think that's probably it for me. Wow, pretty awesome that some of you guys are still here and have stayed here for a while. We're at about, I think I'm at about 3 hours now. Wow, I'm going to be honest, I was really hoping for this to trim this down to 2 hours, but it's probably my own fault for jamming in so much content into week's topics. So, guys, with that being said, and gals, of course, I hope everyone enjoyed. Keep in mind, we are going to be back again next week. Tuesday, same time. So if you're interested in tuning into that, we're actually going to be talking about the mid game, which is kind of like day 31 leading up to day 90 when migration opens. So that's actually going to be a really interesting week for next week's session that we talk about. So again, anyone and everyone is of course more than welcome. I appreciate everyone tuning in and listening. You're more than welcome for anyone here if you want to ever reach out and ask me a question. I try to pride myself on getting back to and responding to everyone, no matter how long it takes, even if a friendly reminder is needed. But feel free. And again, I'll be posting, they'll most likely be locking the voice channel chat, but I will post the link there or provide one of the mods a link so they can post it after they close it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. A great session. I appreciate, again, everyone who tuned in. And I guess until next week. Excuse me, before I even get off, as always, right, if any of you guys want to check out, any of my content on YouTube, right, my link is in my name. In addition, head over to the IK Video Creators channel if you want to look at videos that other CCs are putting out as well. Right, there's a lot of good creators, I think, in IK. And some even in different languages. If you're someone where English is not your native, then of course you can check those out as well. So make sure you check out that. And then I guess until next time, guys, I am out, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your day, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. Take care.